To be frank, it wasn't until about 3 weeks ago that I started watching this show. I had forgotten about its existence, being too young to understand its complexities during its initial release. Until I walked to class one day, waiting by the door for my teacher to let us in, I looked down to see my friend holding his phone, watching the show. It was blurry as I was standing up and he was crouched over on the floor. And yet, with a single shot and no context to what he was watching, I knew immediately that it was Mr. Robot. Nothing with Rami Malek, no title screen, nothing. It was merely the shot composition that gave it away. And honestly, that's amazing. Mr. Robot is a show from 2015 centered around a hacker with a dream. He works at a cybersecurity company, only being able to push through the day by consuming large amounts of drugs. And yeah, it's not prison time, I swear to God.
Say my name.
Shadow the Hedgehog's a bitch-ass motherfucker.
And yet, his original purpose still stays, that being to make a change. But obviously, before I can begin shilling the show, I need to talk about the elephant in the room, Fight Club. I had watched Mr. Robot before Fight Club and was dubious about all these claims that it was merely a ripoff of this critically acclaimed movie. And the verdict? Yeah. But it was the best ripoff I've ever seen. I think this quote by the show's creator says it all. I'll say this right now. I rip off of every movie and TV show I've ever seen in my life. I'm a film nerd. Honestly, this is the right attitude for any form of storytelling. Every single concept under the sun has been used, distributed, shown time and time again. Originality is truthfully a thing of the past. So instead of creating a brand new story, which would have been virtually impossible, he leached quite heavily, to be completely frank.
Anyway, I started blasting. Bang!
I described the story as if Fight Club was allowed to expand on all the ideas that it wanted to touch on. The fact of the matter is that you can either push all these ideas into a 2.5-hour movie, which is simply not enough time to elaborate on them, or you can give it almost 2 days worth of runtime and flesh things out. Now, this isn't to say Fight Club doesn't work well with what it's been given. Truthfully, this is one of the better movies I've seen. I just think that the longer format of a show could have given it time to blossom, and that's precisely what Mr. Robot did. As Sam Esmail said before, he rips off everything he enjoys, which is what every filmmaker does in some capacity. There's enough to differentiate it from Fight Club and acknowledge it as its own entity. With that said, if you've watched the movie beforehand, you'll be able to point out plot points, bars,
all the way bars,
almost instantaneously, and yet it'll simultaneously surprise you at every turn. Before I continue with the video, if you like anything you see at all, consider hitting the like button, commenting, and subscribing. It would really aid me with the algorithm, and by the end of the video, I will have earned your subscription. Also, I have a Discord server, so if you'd like to join that, that'd be super cool. Let's get into the show.
Let's go!
The show begins with our protagonist, Elliot Alderson, talking directly to us, the viewer, as the opening logos of the show slowly reveal themselves. He states that we're only in his head.
Maybe I should give you a name. But that's a slippery slope. You're only in my head. We have to remember that.
Referring to the possibility of mental illness or paranoia, which is quickly verified by him saying,
There's a powerful group of people out there that are secretly running the world.
This notion, although completely legitimate in the world of Mr. Robot, is illustrated as the obsessive thoughts of a madman. It cuts to a shot of Elliot being surveilled by men in black, expressing his paranoia and showing to the audience that there might be some plausibility to his conspiracies. One thing I love about this series is its usage of the unreliable narrator.
Where am I? Where's Reznov?
This is a storytelling technique in which the protagonist either has a genuine mental illness and cannot differentiate fact from fiction, or if they're trying to purposefully alter events in an attempt to retain the audience's support. Either way, from this introduction, everything Elliot says from here on out will lack the proper credentials that it needs to form a coherent timeline. Elliot states that he missed out on Angela's, a childhood friend of his, birthday party, instead choosing to pursue a criminal in a cafe. Another thing to notice is the composition of each shot in this scene. The camera never fully fixates on a single character, and when it does, they're off to the side slightly, creating this sense of inadequateness and a belittling lack of power. This little confrontation at the coffee shop acts as our hook to the story, demonstrating how it'll operate moving forward. A hook has to do a couple of things for the viewer, those being introducing the protagonist, introducing the world, setting up a motivation for the protagonist, setting a goal for the show, and, of course, hooking the viewer.
Cheesy.
And Mr. Robot does this masterfully. This scene is a slow build. It begins with Elliot sitting down at a seemingly random man's table, followed by the guy naturally wondering what's happening.
Can I help you with something?
Elliot mentions the gigabit connection that was offered by the shop and says that it scratched the part of his mind that doesn't allow good to exist without condition. This sets up two things. One, that he has an affinity for tech, and two, that his life is bleak, and thus it can be inferred that the rest of the show will follow this pattern, including this very exchange. This is when it is revealed that he is a hacker and Rohit, the man he is pursuing, is a... yes, he must be a Discord mod. And now, under pressure, Rohit attempts to persuade Elliot to not show the evidence to the cops.
I did not hurt anyone. Never did. My personal life.
Elliot mistakenly opens up a little bit, mainly servicing the audience by giving us insight into him.
I understand what it's like to be different. I'm very different, too. I mean, I don't to little kids, but...
Got him!
I don't know how to talk to people. My dad was the only one I could talk to, but he died.
How did he pass, may I ask?
Leukemia.
Of course, Rohit takes this opportunity and uses it to exploit him, a last-ditch attempt at trying to save himself. You can actively see his face shift when he has this sudden realization, almost as if a light bulb appeared over his head. They begin talking about how Elliot's dad died of leukemia from radiation. This starts a separate subplot that will be prevalent throughout the entirety of the show. Despite Rohit's manipulation tactics, Elliot seems totally unfazed by everything. When the confrontation reaches its climax, that splendid score by McQuail kicks in, setting up an unnerving techno vibe.
I made sure to include the current time and location on my anonymous tip.
Wait, hold on. I'll give you the money.
Elliot refuses any payment, unveiling that he cares more about justice than his own self-interest. Boom, title card. This hook is spectacular in its delivery. It sets up so much while leaving mysteries here and there to be followed up on eventually. But what really sells it are the shots. This is, as I previously mentioned, what this show is all about. Dynamic, tension-building shots. Everything in this show uses a ton of negative space and characters facing in a direction that is away from our field of view. Since no one ever directly faces the camera, it gives them this feeling that they are weak and small, similar to how Elliot was saying that he was being followed. The shot composition symbolizes powerlessness and how one man can't do anything to change a system that all people rely on. We cut back to the train. A man attempts to talk to Elliot briefly, not taking the hint that he doesn't want to be spoken to. For those that have already watched the series, you'd know this character is very important, but he isn't portrayed that way in these early episodes. He's a figure, a shadow that watches over Elliot. As the episode progresses, we start to see evidence to back up his previous claims, the main one being social anxiety. Sam Esmail, the show's creator, understands the concept of show, don't tell better than most filmmakers. For instance, the black sweatshirt Elliot bears symbolizes the wall he puts up between him and others. It's these little things, the thought patterns, the lack of attachment, that fully realize this character.
Hey.
Hi.
Yo, buddy. Missed you last night. Where were you? Gotta go. Big meeting today.
This is Ollie Parker, wrongfully believing that Elliot's social anxiety is a personal attack against him. He's not wrong to a certain degree, but yeah. He's portrayed as this dim-witted character, almost as if he's the Roy of this world, making Angela Pam.
Right! Right!
Angela is Elliot's childhood friend, and it's shown later that they both shared a similar experience together. Her mom died from the same radiation that Elliot had, and thus their bond is strong. Strong enough to excuse missing a birthday party, which, to be fair, that's pretty big. It's shown that Elliot has partial feelings for Angela, which are never fully elaborated on because of, plot, but it's in these little interactions that we get to see how they truly feel about each other. There are minor subtleties to their dynamic that reinforce her attachment to him, and although he subconsciously knows that there's no way they could end up together, there's hope in these subtleties. Every single friend, or I suppose acquaintance, that Elliot has made are all hacked by him shortly after they meet. This is due to his unrelenting desire for information and control brought on by childhood trauma, but I'll touch on that a little later. Krista is a victim of this, and despite her purpose being to understand Elliot to the fullest extent, the inverse applies more heavily. Elliot is generally more attentive than her, showing how years of extensive learning don't match actual experience. She's been doing this in a deliberately controlled environment, as opposed to one in which control must be forged. Elliot touches on how the rise of the internet has made us unanimously lose respect for every celebrity or icon or politician there ever was. That's because there's always a shadow behind the highly curated public image that they portray on television, and it's entirely accessible to the public via Google or Internet Explorer if you're a Facebook user. Rest in peace. Perhaps this has to do with Elliot's mistrust for everyone, hence why he needs power in every relationship he's in. Elliot describes how everyone is sedated by wealth and material possessions, but in the end, they're all meaningless.
Fuck society.
What is it about society that disappoints you so much?
Oh, I don't know. Is it that we collectively thought Steve Jobs was a great man, even when we knew he made billions off the backs of children? Or maybe it's that it feels like all our heroes are counterfeit. The world itself's just one big hoax. We do this not because Hunger Games books makes us happy, but because we want to be sedated. Because we're cowards.
When talking to Krista about what happened at Angela's party, he mentions that he got a girl's number. A complete lie simply to make her happy. Through this lie, he's sedating himself into believing that he's happier than he truly is. A form of self-convincing. It doesn't work though, Krista immediately realizing the lie after the Hunger Games is referenced.
I got a girl's number.
You did.
Cute. She likes the Hunger Games.
You're hiding again, Elliot.
Yo, man. Do you wanna do lunch today?
His interaction with Ollie is genuinely painful. You have these two people that don't want to be near each other, but somewhat need to in order to please someone they both care about. Again, Jim, Roy, and Pam, but like cringeworthy and demented. In this scene, we also get a clever insight into Elliot, seeing how he hates being touched. Finally, another introvert such as myself.
Don't you ever touch me.
This is an introduction to the most vital subplot of the show. E-Corp, the biggest company in the world, walks in through the door, a group of men in suits directed to a business room. A man named Terrell Wellick meets Elliot and introduces himself.
Oh, hi. Tyrell Wellick, Senior Vice President Technology. You know, I started out exactly where you are, and to be honest, you know, my heart is still there, so I see you running GNOME. I know this desktop environment is supposed to be better, but you know what they say, old habits, they die hard.
Immediately, you can tell there's something off about Tyrell. His demeanor, his speech patterns, it's all too charismatic to be as techie as Elliot is. A red flag of such. I know I'm doing a lot of cuts, but this first episode needs to initiate many character dynamics and subplots, and I kind of need to just bang them out one by one. In the next scene, Elliot is shown crying in a corner, watching as his mom forcefully pushes his younger self on a table. He has no family, no true friends to call on in case of emergency. That's another thing the show does really, really well. Perception. Elliot can call Angela at any moment if he really needed to, but feels that it isn't an option due to his own perception of events. Angela thinks Elliot simply ditched her and didn't want to make an attempt to go to her birthday party at all, but he did, and anxiety got the best of him. Also, in the scene, the character of Shayla is shown, revealing how Elliot is a drug addict and how she's his supplier, somewhat of a symbiotic relationship. They know each other through the drugs, and although he initially wants her out, they end up sleeping together. Afterward, Elliot decides to check on how Krista is doing, noticing that she's currently out to dinner with Michael, her current boyfriend. Through the hack, Elliot finds out that Michael is cheating on his wife with Krista. To hack him, Elliot meets with Michael shortly after his dinner with Krista, requesting to use his phone to call his mom. In reality, Elliot simply called himself, using this as a vessel for finding Michael's phone number. Elliot heads home through the subway, Angela calling him as he comes out, which is when I realized something. Okay, so Krista and Michael are having dinner at night. That's fine, right? But when Angela calls Elliot, he says that it's 3 in the morning. What? Do people have dinner this late? Am I mentally deranged? Anyway, there's apparently been a hack at Allsafe, and Lloyd, the current employee working on stopping it, is having difficulty. According to Angela, this was a DDoS attack, meaning that servers from all over the world are working to disrupt this. The attack is strong enough to warrant some questioning, and Elliot comes to the conclusion that there's a rootkit in their servers, which Lloyd then describes as,
"It's like a crazy serial rapist with a very big dick."
Jesus, Lloyd.
I've made a severe...
Gideon is incredibly stressed by everything, which is later brought up on their flight back to New York. Elliot flies over to their servers and performs his, techno magic, basically, learning that there's a hidden file in the virus. The virus itself is called fsociety00.dat, hinting at Elliot's declining mental state. Instead of fully deleting the virus, he decides to keep this singular file, making it so that only he can access it. On the flight back, Gideon thanks Elliot for his work. There, he decides to come out as gay, motivated by the thought that this was a hate-based attack, and generally stands as an offering to Elliot.
Did you know that I'm gay?
No.
Consider this me coming out to you then, okay?
Gideon wants to understand him better. Obviously, Elliot is quite reluctant, but Gideon makes his attempt anyway. This continues the trend of Elliot's attachment disorder, a mental condition in where an individual has difficulty either forming relationships or they become excessively clingy. Elliot is the former. This disorder is caused by trauma during the early stages of development, usually when the mind first begins forming, but can occur later in childhood as well. This can easily be linked to his delusions and paranoia, perhaps acting as a hidden catalyst for many events. In the next scene, Elliot is once again on a train, seeing the man he saw earlier sit down in front of him. On this man's shirt, a sign that says Mr. Robot lays embroidered in the fabric, subconsciously increasing Elliot's trust for this man. Now for this, we need to head into spoiler territory. This show has an incredible amount of replay value. There are many little details that won't be caught at first, but when looked back on, really broaden the scale of the bigger picture. This is one of those instances. Normally, Elliot wouldn't have trusted this man at all, but since he not only mentioned the file that he failed to delete,
I think you should come with me, but only if you didn't delete it.
And wears this symbol of his childhood, Elliot has no choice but to see how far the rabbit hole goes. FSociety00.dat was simply the first example of his childhood coming back to haunt him. This event triggers the part of his brain that makes him question reality from fiction, and he doesn't even know it. Using the knowledge that we learn much later in the series, it can be inferred that this virus that was implanted into the servers was from Elliot himself, or someone that knows him well. Something eerily close planted the clue. He followed the clue. He wanted the clue. His mind, unconsciously, needed him to go on this mission. Tired with his current ordinary life, he strived for an adventure, an experience that wasn't completely lonely, hence Mr. Robot. Another thing to notice is the sound design for this scene. When Mr. Robot leaves the train, you hear a voice from the intercom say,
"Stand clear of the closing doors, please."
In both a literal and symbolic sense, his door to happiness, or at least not crippling loneliness, was closing, and thus he shot out of that train. But then Mr. Robot mentions that they're going to Coney Island.
Then what? Then we're going to Brooklyn, out by Coney Island.
Which subconsciously unlocks a part of Elliot's brain, a part that's been buried, presumably since childhood. As he asks more questions, Mr. Robot rejects, and instead begins talking about his childhood. To summarize, he says that his father was a petty thief, believing wholeheartedly that everyone steals in some capacity or another. This to an extent is true. He goes on to say that when his father finally was caught, he lost all respect for him. This monologue is equivalent to the one Elliot dreamt of in Krista's office. They both go to Coney Island and meet up with the hacker group titled F Society. One thing to notice is how Darlene is staring at Elliot like he's gone insane. And after this introduction, he does go somewhat insane, questioning everything that's happened up until this point. During this, he says,
"I'm crazy. I have to be crazy because that didn't just happen, right? But I created you. I didn't create this."
This line right here makes you wonder about all the information being given to us. Moving back to the unreliable narrator plot point I brought up earlier, everything that's being shown to us is through his eyes. Protagonists in media are not only supposed to be a person that the audience can root for, but they're also supposed to ground us in a clear vision. The issue with that is, when only a singular perspective of the story is shown, some details get completely blurred or left out entirely. This heightens the importance of all character interactions Elliot has with people. As the audience, we need to see how they're responding to the things that he is saying in an attempt to make sense of the greater picture. Speaking of which, Angela stands at Elliot's doorstep when he arrives back home, requesting to watch his favorite movie with him.
You wanna get high and watch your favorite movie? He saved our asses last night. I thought Gideon was definitely gonna fire me.
To cover for his mysterious disappearance, he states that he fell asleep on a train, to which Angela blurts out how much of a lie it sounds like. The reason I say this is part of the greater picture is because of their attachment, totally dependent on their parents. I'm going to skip over the next scene because there's not much need for analysis there. Angela goes up, sees Shayla naked, leaves, and Elliot kicks her out.
What are you doing posting man ass in the
Right after, Elliot does some research on F Society, the building they're using to house their crimes. He goes back to this building the day after, meeting with Darlene in the front. Now, this scene is incredibly interesting, knowing everything that comes up later. In fact, their dynamic is the most interesting in the entire show, period. Consequently, I'm going to decipher it line by line.
Hey man, where's your boss?
Darlene immediately realizes that something's off about Elliot. His personality shifted when the show began, and with Darlene having the closest connection to him, it was only natural for her to figure out within their first exchange.
Okay, cut the bullshit. When are you going to give us access to the root directory?
Not fully comprehending which personality she's talking to, she wrongly assumes that he knows how to access it.
What?
Elliot naturally doesn't understand what this means and treats it as such.
Dude, come on. I wrote that root kit. I still have to put Colby's IP in the .dat file.
Again, believing that he knows at all what she's talking about. I'd like to stress that Mr. Robot was assisting her when writing this code, and thus having no knowledge of it will heavily confuse her. Mr. Robot is essentially Elliot's vessel to reality. He deciphers things where Elliot simply is unable to, due to the sudden personality shift. On the Ferris wheel, Mr. Robot explains to him that they're going to take down Evil Corp, something that Elliot previously mentioned he wanted to pursue. Their plan is to remove all the debt that people owe E-Corp, an act that will redistribute the wealth among the entire nation. Of course, it's a difficult procedure, which is precisely why Elliot seems so reluctant in the beginning. He states the flaws with the plan, to which Mr. Robot refutes. The first episode follows the most basic storytelling principle of all time: the monomyth. For those of you that don't geek out over stories, let me explain. The monomyth, or the hero's journey, as most people know it as, marks the stages a protagonist must follow in order to stop whatever evil may lie in the shadows. In 1949, an author named Joseph Campbell created this term, using it in his book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. Here, it is detailed how most heroes' journeys go. Ironically enough, this episode stops precisely where it should on the monomyth, the first stage. They are as follows. First, a call to adventure. This comes with the initial hack on Allsafe. Second, supernatural aid. This comes in the form of Mr. Robot and somewhat Darlene. This is what kickstarts everything. Then, when he eventually agrees to go along with everything, he goes beyond the threshold, bringing him into the dark world, as author James Scott Bell puts it. It's usually used in a literal sense when talking about fantasy stories, like Mordor or something along those lines, but in this case, it means that more harm can be bestowed upon Elliot now that he's taken the call to action. From there, a mentor decides to help the protagonist get to whatever goal they desire, although they first reject the call to adventure rather than agree to it. Although Elliot doesn't flat out reject it, there's a hint of hesitation, as his trust for this figure that in his mind is quietly following him isn't that high.
You're gonna frame him? No one's gonna believe that. Yeah, he'll just go to jail. What good will that do?
A montage follows this, showing how Elliot is agreeing to help F Society in their mission, as Mr. Robot predicted.
What do we got?
So, if you'll take a look at the first page of your agenda...
You're the one who stopped the hack.
A meeting between Allsafe and E-Corp ensues, with Terry Colby very prominently gaining the power of the room. He creates some awkward moments between all of them. Colby notices a discrepancy in the timeline Angela presents, to which Elliot saves her by creating a phony reason for their technical errors.
Noticed the breach at 2:07 a.m. Eastern Standard on Friday night.
You mean Saturday?
Sorry, yes. Technically, Saturday morning.
Okay, Angela, that's what we're here for. The technicals.
That night, it is revealed that Michael Hansen was using a false identity, his real name being Lenny Shannon, warranting Elliot to personally meet him to stop him from seeing her anymore. This encounter is very similar to the first one shown in the episode. Even the possibility of Lenny being a was brought up. Of course, Elliot also takes the dog. I mean, why not?
One more thing. I'm gonna need something from you.
What follows are two confrontations that both begin the gradual crumbling of Elliot's life with both Krista and Angela. The former, Krista, trying to hide her devastation during a therapy appointment. The latter, Angela, frustrated with how Elliot tried to help her with the last meeting.
You think we can talk?
What? I don't want to talk to you because I feel embarrassed every time I think about what happened.
It's been 3 weeks.
I have to get back to work.
You're just gonna ignore me?
You didn't have to stick up for me in there.
Instead of walking away, he hugs her. They are seen about to kiss when everyone stands from their desks to see the TV behind them. Terry Colby, the man they framed for the hacking, was arrested.
Or in part
The episode finishes with the same visuals of the men we saw at the beginning of the episode. He was finally face to face with the 1% of the 1%. The episode concludes with Terrell's face coming to focus and the words,
Bonsoir, Elliot.
Please tell me you're seeing this too.
Terrell begins the episode by offering a job at Evil Corp, ranting about how power is only given to those that take it, to which Elliot replies,
Can I think about it?
What's funny about this scene is how the music completely overpowers Terrell's speech, almost as if his power is, in itself, an illusion. Terrell asks for the room. He gets strangely close to Elliot, whispering, almost begging for him to work for them.
Elliot Alderson, I want to offer you a position here at Evil Corp.
Thus begins a dangerous path between the two of them. Even though Elliot rejects, Terrell's attachment to him still lingers, festering there for all to see. Mr. Sutherland picks up Elliot and brings him home to where he sees a man grabbing Shayla's arm. This man is Fernando Vera, another guy who coincidentally gets weirdly obsessive about Elliot, as well as being one of Shayla's customers. Here, Elliot asks for morphine, and morphine alone from her. She says that she previously promised to never give him morphine without Suboxone. His stress is very obviously getting to him. He uses this new high to hack Terrell, which he proceeds to believe was too easy. Elliot is attempting to justify his excessive usage, unconsciously claiming that he isn't fully addicted. 6 to 14 hours into acute morphine withdrawal, one may experience irritability, anxiety, and especially drug craving. 14 to 18 hours in, and depression, as well as headaches may set in. By breaking the schedule, he's building up his tolerance, and accordingly, his depression will fluctuate. This continues the same trend that the monomyth started in the last episode. In any fantasy, this is where the protagonist would be gradually entering another world he knows practically nothing about. He can't function at work properly, defensively concerned about what would happen if the fact that he kept the file were to be public information. And his worry is immediately intensified as Gideon asks for Elliot to come to his office and explain the DAT file to him. Elliot furthers himself from Gideon, stating that he doesn't know him very well. They took 2 steps forward on that plane ride and 1 step back.
I'm gonna talk to HR about a salary bump for you.
Please.
No, take the raise. You saved the company. Why didn't you tell me about the DAT file?
Yeah, I didn't know what I had.
You're never sure about anything unless there's something to be sure about.
Yeah, you don't know me that well.
Symbolic of literally everything in the show. Like, it's crazy. It's revealed that F Society is, quote, threatening to dump everything unless the FBI frees Colby. The video that's shown to the world is reminiscent of the Max Headroom signal hijacking in 1987. The Vitamies.
Is that the bite?
And where a man bearing a mask seizes a broadcast of Doctor Who to both simultaneously send a message and make fun of massive companies. Of course, F Society is much more, damning in their requests.
First, release our leader, Terry Colby, from your illegitimate prison immediately. Second, release all the people of the world from your even more illegitimate prisons of debt. Third, dissolve your corporation and donate all your assets to charities around the world.
But it's clear that Sam Esmail took inspiration from this event. The voice in the broadcast is that of Mr. Robots, meaning Elliot orchestrated all that's currently being unveiled. We cut to Ollie and Angela walking together when they randomly bump into Elliot. Ollie, being the guy he is, once again asks Elliot out to dinner, to which he agrees, only cracking under the pressure of the men in black. In the background, you can see as these mysterious figures slowly approach, and buckling under pressure, Elliot targets Ollie's weak point. He rushes away, only for a man selling CDs to talk to Angela and Ollie. Another example of Elliot furthering himself into the dark world. His delusions are getting stronger, his stress is at an all-time high, so much so that he denies his nature in favor of instinct. Ollie decides to take these CDs, stating that this man has been outside their house for weeks on end.
Yo, you look like a beautiful couple.
What?
Yo, shit's deep, lyrical, poetic.
Just like he eat rich minion.
Bro, you've been outside our building for 2 weeks now. I'll take
No way it was that easy.
And I'll tweet, but only if I like it. Alright, I only have 48 followers, but it's growing.
Oh boy, he has 48 Twitter followers. I wonder if he'll lick a pint of ice cream at a supermarket and put it back for clout. Maybe even steal a soap dispenser at his local middle school? Who knows? Elliot walks home to see Darlene in his shower, showing the drastic perspective difference between the two of them. From Darlene's point of view, she's visiting her brother, having a fun time before they need to pursue the mission of their lives. But from Elliot's point of view, this random woman he's just met is in his home, nude and borrowing clothes. Darlene mentions that she wants to get some froyo, and they switch scenes to the train. Elliot wonders why she knows where he lives, to which she replies, "Why wouldn't I know?" Again, another vast perspective shift. They both need to acquaint themselves with this new reality, a reality of not knowing who each other are. This is especially difficult on Darlene since she's self-aware. Once more, this is all sudden. Since this new personality spawned at the very beginning of the show, they leave the train, then quickly get back on. Darlene saying it's because she likes to stay on her toes, which only increases Elliot's paranoia. He wonders if she's able to see the men in black as well. One more time, the dark world. Things are finally starting to heat up. In Plot and Structure by James Scott Bell, he mentions the idea of doorways, how we get from act to act. Following along with the monomyth, we are now moving into Act 2A of this show, where the bulk of the action occurs. To quote Bell, he states that it's, quote, a thrusting of the character forward, a sense of inevitability. We are creatures of habit, we search for security. Our characters are the same, so unless there is something to push the lead into Act 2, he will be quite content to stay in Act 1. He desires to remain in his ordinary world. This sense of inevitability that he's talking about comes with Mr. Robot. How in the next scene he takes over for Elliot, staying cautious to fully realize the plan he's been brewing. Stories need to strike a balance between the protagonist being forced to continue forward and actually wanting to, working off their own volition, which is a strange concept as it sounds inherently contradictory. He begins explaining his plan in extreme detail, Elliot showing slight reluctance but buying into it because deep inside, this is what he truly wants. To bring it back to Fight Club, Mr. Robot is everything that Elliot wants to be. The protagonists in Fight Club don't actually have a name, so I'm gonna refer to them by their actors, those being Brad Pitt and Edward Norton. Brad Pitt is everything that Edward Norton wants to be. Charismatic, strong, good-looking. And that's why, in their first encounter where Brad hits Edward, Edward stands back up, and wants more. Mr. Robot is the embodiment of his inner psyche and desires. He just doesn't know it yet. And thus, the paranoia runs sporadically. He doesn't want to be in this. The dark world has gotten to him. Elliot promptly rushes to see Shayla, seeing that she's in the bathroom and that Vera is sitting on her couch. Vera tries to introduce himself, Elliot hiding that he already knows everything about him.
Shayla.
Yo, she'll be out in a minute. You can sit and wait if you want.
I think we should check on her.
Only nigga I know to take withdrawal meds while he using. Probably even convince yourself you ain't an addict. Forgot to introduce myself. I'm
Fernando Vera, Shayla's supplier, one of the worst human beings I've ever hacked. His password? Eat a dick 6969.
He can't remove Vera from the picture as that would halt his supply of morphine, which, with all the stress he's feeling, would be detrimental. Something that's really interesting about this scene is how Vera talks about hating himself. He says that you don't know hate until you hate yourself, and that is his power.
Matter of fact, I tried to kill myself a couple of times. I hated myself, man. Thought that shit was a weakness for a long time. And then I realized that shit was my power. People walk around, act like they know what hate means. Nah, no one does until you Hate yourself.
This quote confused me for a while, and I wasn't quite sure what to make of it, but now I think I've gotten a grasp on it. To quote Sir Francis Bacon in 1597, knowledge itself is power. Hatred of yourself is an over-obsession of your flaws, noticing them and letting them eat at you until you're hollow. It's the feeling that no one can love you because, hell, you can't even love yourself. It's knowing every single thing that's wrong with you and feeling that you're unable to change it, even if it's well within your capabilities. But within that fundamental realization of imperfection is the opportunity to fix yourself. Now that you're well aware of your wrongdoings and blemishes, obsessing over your flaws, you have that knowledge and can use it to build yourself and contort others. You can exploit them by opening up, giving them a sense of security, then pulling the rug out from under them. Or alternatively, you can use how you found your own flaws to find their flaws. There lies the knowledge of yourself and of others. And knowing Vera well, he will use this against people. Damn, that got dark quite fast. Here's Among Us to ease the... Once Vera leaves, Elliot immediately uses this new opportunity to try and free Shayla from the bathroom. Inside, we see her in the bathtub, wondering how she got to this point. It can be inferred that Vera her, forcing Elliot into a state of contemplation. In the end, he decides to deal with Vera, quitting drugs altogether. With Krista, Elliot discusses how choice is an illusion, how everything is so similar nowadays to dull our senses. People like to feel as if they have control over all they do, even if it's not real. It brings us a feeling of security, safety, and warmth. They mention that Elliot's father had this same feeling when he was battling leukemia. His father had a choice. That choice being to either go against the company he works at to reveal the radiation poisoning, or do nothing and admit defeat. Krista begs for him to explain what's happening, to which he exclaims, "Shut up!" For first-time viewers, this is another indication of his stress levels getting dangerously high, but for those who are watching for a second time, you know that this is because of certain events that transpired between his dad and him when he was young. Again, he doesn't know it, but he wants to keep those memories locked away as much as possible. In the next scene, Angela tries to call Elliot to no avail. We switch to Ollie, who is in the background trying to use the CD that was given to him by the man on the street. Naturally, since it's a virus, the computer ejects it upon input. On the computer, we can see that Ollie is cheating on Angela with someone named Stella B. He quickly responds to the email sent by her and moves on to help Angela with Elliot. Ollie lies to her, saying that he's going out to meet some friends of his. A lie meaning he's going to see Stella, maybe even tier 3 sub to her. Here it is revealed that the CD gave the man outside their house access to Ollie's webcam. At Coney Island, Elliot meets with Mr. Robot, who is sitting on a fence overlooking the water. There, Mr. Robot asks him to talk about his father. This is because he wants to understand what this new personality knows and see if he remembers what actually happened to him during his childhood. Elliot tells the story we all knew. His father was his best friend, got fired from Evil Corp, contracted leukemia, made Elliot swear to not tell anyone. Elliot, being a child, felt it was his moral obligation to tell his mother, and as a result, his dad pushed him out a window. Mr. Robot asks Elliot if he ever thought his dad was right. Elliot is confused, stating that he was 8 years old when he told his mom. Then his sentence is cut off.
I understand what it's like to lose a parent. Do you ever think he was right?
You naughty, naughty. You teasing me.
About what?
Hurting you that day? You ever think you deserved it?
I didn't do anything to him. I was trying to help him. I was 8 years old.
Mr. Robot had pushed him off the side onto the sand below. With everything that's introduced in Season 4, this is because Mr. Robot was desperately trying to get a hold of the real Elliot, the one that had been lost when the series began. The conclusion to Episode 2. The episode starts with Terrell rehearsing his lines before a meeting in the hopes of becoming the new CTO of Evil Corp. He slaps himself, brutally coercing his public image into that of a shiny, successful businessman.
My internal promotion shows
When he goes to the meeting, Philip Price, the man who would give him the position, says that the meeting must be postponed. Terrell, in all of his scenes, is portrayed as this broken man, someone who desperately wants to be something, but he can't quite grasp onto it. He smiles only when Philip meets him, completely ignoring the receptionist who briefly attempts to talk to him. To him, everything is about public image and, most importantly, power. A perfect encapsulation of the show's themes. To be honest, he's my favorite character in this entire show. Moving from episode 3 for a moment, I feel that he was severely underutilized. It's such an interesting character exploration for him to be abandoned, albeit justifiably, for an entire season. The entire second season. Where is he? Did he go to Detroit? Where is he? But I digress. After the meeting, his driver pulls up on a clearly homeless man. Terrell prepares to give him money, to which the man responds, "Could I get 300 this time?" Whatever it is he plans on doing, from this exchange, it's evident that it's a frequent occurrence. Terrell removes his suit, puts on medical gloves, and walks up to the man. He begins beating the man up, not stopping even when the man is begging for the attacks to halt. The music blares, and the title card unveils itself, held prominently above the homeless man rolling around on the floor. Something I've been neglecting is the score of these higher intensity moments, and I think that needs to be addressed. Artist McQuail states that, quote, "The music would go back and forth between major and minor chords that would help to describe this conflict in Elliot." Now, I don't know anything about music theory, but it's pretty damn good. Most of the themes are made directly for him, but I think that same logic can be applied to a plethora of other characters. Inner dilemmas, questioning why we do things, and that's why I'm bringing it up here with Terrell. Inside, he's somewhat similar to Elliot. Two personalities, two facades that both are fighting for control. The one side that's quieter, sadder, and more robotic, and the other that just beat up a homeless man out of anger. It's within the score that even more depth and life are given to these characters. We cut to Elliot in the hospital, his injuries looking bleak from the high fall from before. Shayla and Krista both stand before him, wondering how this happened. Krista tries to ask him questions, but Elliot once again shows his reluctance. She's angry, wanting to know the full story. Finally, Elliot blurts out that he has been taking morphine. Krista needs verification that he will stop taking morphine by forcing him to take a bi-monthly drug test. This is no problem for him, as he can simply hack into the hospital's infrastructure and edit his medical history. When Shayla and Elliot get home, she asks him if he had anything to do with Vera receiving jail time. He is quiet, reflective. She immediately knows what he did. Elliot says that he did nothing, but it's too late. She already knows. They move on from the subject and notice that Elliot's lock to his apartment is missing. Inside, Darlene is sitting on his couch, reading about how various celebrities want to join F Society. Elliot promptly kicks her out. The sibling bond they shared before is now completely non-existent as a result of this new personality. We cut to Angela out on a run when she sees a man drop a wallet. She picks it up and returns it to him before hearing a woman yelling behind her. According to her, that was her wallet that Angela had just given to the thief. Angela has no words and watches as the woman runs after him. After this, we see Ollie on the phone with Stella, and Angela returns from her run. She begins recounting what had happened on the run, when he says something very strange.
Someone dropped their wallet. I picked it up to give it to them, but then
Nothing strange about that. Just shows how good of a person you are. Always have been. Almost to a fault.
What does that mean?
Just that you're too good for the world.
What a simp. The man that gave the CD to Ollie is named Cisco, and he gives Ollie 100 hours to infect Allsafe, or else everything about how he's cheating on Angela will be released to the public. In storytelling, there's a technique called spark lines, which is something the show does frequently. Although there are many signs of danger and corruption, there are also small, intimate moments that piece them together, thus creating a graph of sorts. Up and down, they all form this greater story. A balance between maintaining hope and coming to terms with the reality of the situation. I bring this up because, in the next scene, Elliot is invited out to dinner by Gideon, to which he initially rejects. When leaving the office, he notices that Mr. Robot is sitting at his desk, waiting for him. Their confrontation is publicly available for all to see, as shown by the extra in the background watching them talk to each other, and the woman walking by. It's unclear what this looks like to an outsider, but it's implied that it looks like he's aggressively talking to himself. They go out to a bar together and have a strangely interesting conversation with the bartender. Mr. Robot had asked for an appletini before the scene began, and the bartender asks Elliot what he wants. Throughout this exchange, Elliot also requests for an appletini, the bartender's eyes staying fixated on him, despite Mr. Robot having some input in the decision. Not once does he even acknowledge Mr. Robot's existence, and that's because Elliot is the one in control at this current time. It makes me wonder if the first appletini that Mr. Robot is having even exists. Perhaps it's Elliot's conscience telling him that's what he wants, as the bartender only asks for payment from Elliot. Again, working into this overarching theme of perception. Mr. Robot asks Elliot not to be too mad at his father for doing what he did. After all, it's his goal for Elliot to perceive his father as a signal of hope. Mr. Robot leaves the bar, Elliot describing it as a non-permanent glitch in the perfect system he's acquired.
Seen another life.
Did you hear that? I can't believe it. Is it really happening? F Society's finally over. The recent glitch and the otherwise neat reality I created over the years. I'll never slip up like that again.
Elliot wants to be a better person, live a better life. Instead of pursuing the danger that once overtook him, he's had enough. Now finding that being addicted to morphine and almost dying just isn't worth it. He asks Gideon the next day at work if the dinner is still on, and agrees to go. As I said, the spark lines are coming. This incredibly bleak event where he's left in the hospital is juxtaposed to a nice dinner with friends and colleagues. But we all know it's only going to go downhill from here.
Are you still trying to rip that CD?
Yeah, it's all scratched up.
In the next scene, we see Terrell trying to find clothes when his wife, Joanna, walks in. She asks him where he's going and states that he's going to a bar. He says it's work-related, and passive-aggressively, she wonders if it's necessary. He responds by saying that everything I do is for us. She asks, us or you? He grabs her by the head and quietly says, us is me, before kissing her and walking out of the room. Moving on, we see Elliot and Shayla go to Gideon's dinner with him. They bicker a bit and he urges her to not tell him who she is. The way he asks is incredibly genuine, proving that he honestly does want to move forward and improve his life. Shayla reveals that she enjoys drawing, revealing that she and Elliot are more alike than they think. His life is so filled with misfortune that even Shayla's existence seems like a bug. He's been unable to truly connect with anyone for so long that becoming intimate with her appears like a glitch in the Matrix.
A grand opportunity, waiting to be taken advantage of.
We see Terrell standing outside a bar. A man named Anwar walks up to him. He wonders why Terrell is here since he is married, as we saw in his last appearance. The two share a kiss and Elliot monologues over it, saying that, quote, a bug's only purpose, its only reason for existence, is to be a mistake that needs fixing, to help you right or wrong. Going out to these bars is Terrell's escape from reality, as well as beating up the homeless man in the beginning. But, we'll move on from that. From there, we cut to Angela and Ollie, along with Shayla and Elliot, standing outside of Gideon's house. Elliot's quietly introducing his date to others. And Lloyd's there too, so there's that. Gideon's husband, Harry, brings the couples in, and Lloyd's there. Yeah, Lloyd's there. He begins asking them how long they've all been together. Angela and Ollie have conflicting answers indicative of their relationship's problems. Elliot says that Shayla and him just got together today, to which everyone is silent. It's really awkward. The next exchange I'm going to quickly gloss over because Gideon and Elliot's relationship doesn't hold much importance to the plot and acts as downtime from everything that's going on, so Gideon hired someone to check the servers and see if there was a file there. Suspicious that Elliot may have left something. He says that nothing was there and apologizes to Elliot. He opens up to him, of course lying, and accepts a hug from Gideon. Next, we see Elliot reminiscing about past events with Angela, showing to the audience how tight their bond is. Before it was kind of hidden, having to look past all these events, but this is the first scene to show how they truly feel about each other up close. Elliot receives some kind of alert on his phone, causing him to turn on the TV. On it, we see that Terry Colby, the man who got arrested for the hack he didn't do, knew of the leukemia spike and was the cause for it. He believed that it wouldn't be cost-effective to deal with it, and that they could handle a potential lawsuit. Angela and Elliot both rush out of the building, knowing that both their parents died because of this man. There's a short scene of young Elliot talking to his mom at a bus stop. She says that cowardice killed his father, to which Elliot doesn't have a proper response. You know, he's a young child. He asks why she's crying, and she abruptly says, "Don't ask so many questions." Anwar and Terrell are seen having together. Terrell helps him with stuff and says that he needs to do the rest in the shower. This is a fantastic insight into his character, illustrating how he's willing to stay clean in the public perception, but will forever remain dirty to himself. Using the brief amount of time he has between when Anwar gets in the shower and when he needs to get in, he installs a rootkit into Anwar's phone. In the next scene, Angela explains to Ollie how all of this unfolded with her and Elliot's parents dying. Ollie is on edge, swiftly moving the subject along to the fact that he's about to compromise the integrity of the company they both work at.
What the hell are you talking about?
I have to tell you something. I don't know why you're putting yourself through this. You don't have to keep looking at it. But I love you and I want to be with you.
Stop speaking. Where's the CD?
In my bag? Why?
He has my bank account, Ollie, and my dad's bank account.
He reveals the photos of Stella, making it clear that it meant nothing and that he truly loves Angela. Naturally, Angela wants to break up, which completely devastates him. I mean, what do you expect, man? Now, because of Ollie's screw-up, Cisco, the man that hacked them, has both her and her father's credit card credentials. The only option is to infect Allsafe with the virus and lose both of their jobs. In the last section of this episode, we first see Gideon wanting to check on the server Elliot worked on to see if anything's there. After his sudden disappearance, the mistrust is high. Finally, we see Terrell bonding with Joanna to a bed on her accord. He doesn't exactly want to go through with anything, but she insists. As a last resort, Joanna wants to have dinner with the Knowles. Scott Knowles, the husband, is the one that will potentially get the job that Terrell has been working so hard to acquire. In the final scene, Elliot comes back to F Society and wants to complete the initially sought out goal, the conclusion to episode 3. The episode begins with a thin, long line of morphine, which cuts to Elliot explaining the plan they will follow to eliminate all debt across the nation. So, the plan is to hook up a Raspberry Pi to Steel Mountain's climate control system to burn all the tapes and records through the temperature becoming too high. The issue is that they need a security exploit to administer the Raspberry Pi, to which there are none. Elliot, completely out of the blue, starts coughing. TV show rules number 1, coughing is never a good sign. It consistently means that there is something very deeply wrong with whoever is showing symptoms of something. In this case, it would be morphine withdrawal, but it's no longer acute. He goes back home, where he has his final long line of morphine. One thing to notice in this scene is the use of colors. For the bulk of this season, the colors are very dull, which can be attributed to both the bleak subject matter and the lack of budget for the series, but this one scene changes that. You can see a candle lit in front of him, covering the line in a coat of glimmer. Elliot, on the other hand, is veiled in darkness, slowly moving into the line for one last snort. As a direct result of this, his delusions start coming back in full force. While taking the dog out for a walk, the men in black from both sides come to face him. Elliot yells at them, wondering what they could possibly want. There are two possible truths to these men in black. Either they are entirely fictional and a creation from Elliot's own paranoia, or they're real people he's just mistaking for villains. It's quite possible that these people actually exist, but the way they're being perceived by Elliot is far from the truth. He locks the door shut, walking away only to hear banging coming from it. For a brief moment, it's portrayed that the men in black are coming after Elliot, but it's only Darlene wanting to inquire more about the plan. She wonders why he's been acting so weird. They both have two separate ideas of how he is being weird. Elliot thinking that all these events that have transpired have led him down a path of drugs and fear, Darlene thinking that she has quite literally lost her brother to insanity. At the current moment, all the tapes are located in the New York facility, meaning the only way they can realistically go through with the plan is to go this very day. All of them agree, Darlene saying that she's going to contact a person from the Dark Army, a notorious hacker group, for assistance. Leslie and Mobley hack a car, using that to reach Steel Mountain, while Elliot stays back and has a one-on-one with Mr. Robot for a brief moment. His senses are heightened to extremes, forcing him to remain in bed when they eventually reach the hotel. Angela leaves Ollie to go meet with her father, Ollie desperately grasping for her approval. It's almost sad at this point, like watching a sick puppy. In reality, Angela is going to check on Elliot, who is evidently not home, and instead experiencing the most physically painful withdrawal symptoms he has ever had. Now, this is portrayed as our hero fighting a battle he desperately wants to win, but I don't think that's exactly the case. You know what he was getting into. It's 100% a complicated dilemma, choosing to quit cold turkey or taking another course of action, but in the end, this is the way it had to be. I'm going to skip the interaction between Trenton and Darlene. All you need to know is that it's Sunday and that Darlene knows where the Dark Army contact will be, and Trenton wants to tag along. Meanwhile, Angela and Shayla are going on a walk together when Shayla gives her... in broad daylight, this woman is still distributing drugs. The score for this scene is oddly uplifting, with a hint of mystery. It portrays this event as one that can help alleviate all of Angela's problems, as opposed to the scores that are placed over Elliot's drug usage. Nothing about that is uplifting in the slightest, instead choosing to focus on how damaging the drug usage can be. It's similar to how drugs are perceived in the real world. In the beginning, it seems like this incredible thing that can help you get through your problems. That is, until you're fully addicted. We cut to Trenton and Darlene at a ping pong arena, for lack of a better term, or table tennis if you're a bitch. Elliot begs Mr. Robot for a single hit of morphine. Of course, Mr. Robot goes through with it since he's a symbol of his greatest desires, and at that current moment, this is it. They go to a sketchy house, giving money to a man in the front who laughingly says there's a potential for Elliot to be killed if he's brought in, kind of like England. This scene is shot unlike any other up until this point. The camera is now handheld, even bumping into Mr. Robot at one point, following Elliot as he scours the house for anything. A woman convinces Elliot to try sitting him down and aiding him in this crumbling residence. As he fades into the chair and the girl proceeds to kiss him, gunshots are heard and seen in the background, a fight ensuing right before him. In all the chaos, Elliot is shot and turns to face the TV. There, a message from F Society plays, telling the world to wake up from its slumber. Of course, this is Mr. Robot speaking to Elliot directly, as this is a dream sequence. This sequence is the first one to hint at Mr. Robot and Elliot being the same person. You watch as Mr. Robot gives him the mask. Although indirect, it's clear that their motivations in this scene are exactly the same. As this series has progressed thus far, their ideals have only aligned further. The next scene is really weird, so I'm just gonna let it play out and do occasional cuts to avoid worldwide blockage.
Hello, friend?
But we're not friends.
Can you tell me what happened to that house?
First, can you tell me, what's your monster?
Your water? Does it need changing?
When you live in a fishbowl, ain't no such thing as change.
Here. Yes, yes. Yes, Elliot, I do. You're not gonna do it, are you? Do you even know what it is? It doesn't fit.
Why not?
Isn't it obvious? You are not Elliot.
Here we go.
Moving on from that, fish talk, I guess. Elliot and Angela are eating dinner together. From the finale of the show, we now know what this truly is. The world he's created deep within his subconscious has finally let him in. The trauma from the withdrawal becoming too hard to handle. Near the two are younger Elliot and his mother, the latter of which forcing the former to eat his food. An interesting thing to notice is that there's a partition between Angela and Elliot, whereas his younger self and his mother have no such wall. This is probably due to the fact that, despite how much Elliot hates her, his mother has always been somewhat close to him, even if it's only through blood. Whereas with Angela, he's never had an opportunity to truly connect with her the way he wanted. Elliot pulls a key from his food, and when Angela sees it, she mistakenly assumes it's him proposing. They hug and she leaves the restaurant, Elliot following shortly behind. Back at F Society, she has a monologue that holds very little meaning at the moment, but once again, with all we eventually know in Season 4, everything can be pieced together. She says, and I quote, "You're not gonna do it, are you? Change the world. Figures. You were only born a month ago." It hints at how Elliot isn't truly himself. It hints at how the real Elliot created F Society, and how this Elliot was only thrown into everything. You're afraid of your monster. Do you even know what it is? It doesn't fit. Elliot is confused and wonders why. Isn't it obvious, she says? You're not Elliot. You're the... And the line is cut short. What she was trying to say is that Elliot was the monster. This idealistic world that he created as an escape is his perception's concept of perfection, thus making this version of Elliot, Mastermind Elliot, the bug that needs fixing. He's imprinting on this world wrongfully. Upon rewatch, this scene is so much more creepy. Imagine, if you will, that you randomly lost yourself. Your main directive is to pursue a mission, losing all forms of social skills and gaining barriers with everyone. In a single moment, you've quite literally lost yourself to the monster. Elliot asks himself if you're the monster, speaking to us directly. He puts on the mask, stating that he is here and that you are alone. Suddenly, he wakes up in a cold sweat, Mr. Robot at his side. When he says that he's not going anywhere, he doesn't mean literally leaving the room. He's referring to the absence of his very existence. Trenton and Darlene see a limo before them, Darlene opting to go inside, knowing that it'll be her Dark Army contact. They both go in, two men in masks greeting them with silence. Their phones are thrown out the window before they all drive away. To summarize the next scene, Shayla and Angela share a moment, kissing before Shayla empowers her. Again, it's supposed to give Angela this sense of motivation and being reborn, so it doesn't require much analysis. Darlene meets up with the Dark Army contact and, lo and behold, it's Cisco, the guy that gave Ollie the funny CD. Turns out they're dating, or like an on-off type situation, you know, like every high school romance. Within Allsafe, Angela is going through with the plan she originally thought of with Ollie, inserting the CD into her main computer, thus infecting the company. The conclusion to episode 4.
Around the area and then spread upward. Local media reported the building was
This episode starts with a lawyer talking to Vera and another inmate, presumably an accomplice in his business. All the crimes he's committed have been well documented through his Twitter, as Elliot was using before to get data on him. As such, he'll be facing many years in prison, since the defendant has a solid case because of things like these. The lawyer makes a sly remark about tabulating your crimes on a social media website, to which Vera says it was his brother's idea.
For every charge they're gonna lay on you, they have these binders. Your Twitters, your Instagram.
Said they wouldn't figure this shit out.
They can't, bro. I'm telling you, it was airtight, V.
Besides, who told you to put your business anywhere near social media?
My aspirational little brother.
You know how much money we saved last year?
Looking at him across the room, the lawyer says that Vera is in prison because of an anonymous tip, and he begins looking at the files. Instantly, he notices a bottle of Suboxone next to his other drugs, now knowing that the man that has just ruined his life is none other than Elliot Alderson. We cut to Vera in his cell, looking at the wall. During this exchange, the OST, I don't know how to pronounce it, I'm just gonna call it Square with the Universe, seemingly derivative of the Crawl Space OST that played in Breaking Bad when Walt was having his Joker moment after losing all his money. I absolutely adore this riser, and how it bleeds into the title card. This is one of my favorite openings in the entire show, so I'll just let it play out.
So that's you. That's who you are. I know you.
When is this going to end?
In his original monologue after Shiloh was, he made his attempt to be all philosophical, trying to understand how both Elliot and himself are. And now, with this new information, he believes he knows exactly who Elliot is. As I said in episode 2, knowledge itself is power. Actions speak louder than words, and this scene juxtaposes the one in episode 2. Elliot agrees to not check on Shayla, but after Vera leaves, he checks on her immediately. Although not actually speaking, he was agreeing to not check on her at that moment. But then, knowing that Vera has become a complication, he used that opportunity to destroy him. Actions. This is the single moment that will eventually lead to Shayla's death. At a cafe, Mr. Robot bumps into an employee at Steel Mountain, quickly scanning their card and using it for F-Society. Romero, Mobley, and Elliot are all in a van, scanning the card they've created and using that to get inside. The literal tagline for the company is impenetrable, which is the most blatant symbolism I've ever seen, but I thought I'd mention it because, you know, looking at the runtime, I've got time on my hands. Elliot begins ranting to himself about how everything has vulnerabilities, stating the ones that his teammates have. But when he gets to Mr. Robot, he just flat out states that he's insane, which is ironic because he's talking about himself. It's immediately clear that Elliot was the wrong person for this job. An employee walks up to him, asking if he's Sam Esmail. It takes Elliot a moment to respond, but he does so in the most unconvincing fashion. And yet, the employee takes it. Next, he asks for a tour, to which the employee says that they don't accept tours without appointments. Elliot then gets really into the part, saying that he's the Sam Esmail, and that the employee should Google him. This could be partially because he really wants to get this job underway, or that he wants a different life entirely, taking this part to heart. Bars. Mr. Robot starts ranting about his frustration, and Elliot relays none of it, instead being rejected by Bill. As he starts to walk back, he turns back to realize that Bill is searching for Sam Esmail, seeing that his Wikipedia page has all this false information. And finally, a tour is offered. Moving on to Angela and Ollie, the promised couple bickering about how she wants to move out. Ollie declares that she's ruining her life, and as a result, she throws his work ID badge and the CD on the bed. He begins panicking, realizing that he no longer has a place to work, seeing that she is deriving some pleasure from this.
Here's an idea of how big this place is.
Bill is very proud to be taken interest by a tech billionaire. He begins talking about the vaults that are on level 2, the very thing F-Society wants to destroy. Elliot inquires about level 2, but Bill says even he doesn't have the authorization to bring him there. One thing to notice is how only Mr. Robot is talking to Elliot, not Mobley or Romero. Even in the scenes of the truck, it's always Mobley or Romero talking, but they never talk to Mr. Robot directly. Another hint that he doesn't exist in the physical world. Mr. Robot says that Elliot knows what it's like to feel small and weak, and that he should use the hatred he has against Bill. The only way for them to progress is for Bill to be removed. Near the elevators, Elliot sees his mom pushing down his younger self, grasping that power and utilizing it in the same way his mother did. Elliot asks Bill to think about something, confusing him. He then follows up by saying,
"If you died, would anyone care? Would they really care? Yeah, maybe they'd cry for a day, but let's be honest, no one would give a shit. They wouldn't. The few people that would feel obligated to go to your funeral would probably be annoyed and leave as early as possible."
Bill then agrees to call his supervisor. You can hear a quiver in his voice after those harsh words got to him. Despite all the bad things in the show, that might have been the most brutal. Afterward, Elliot comes to his senses, wanting to apologize when Mr. Robot stops him. It's really sad. I feel justice for Bill, man. Justice for Bill. But when the supervisor comes, it turns out to be a completely different woman than the one they had expected. That woman being named Trudy. Notice how, of the reaction in the van, Mobley turns to Romero and nobody turns to Mr. Robot. Again, very interesting. Turns out that, on this very day, the woman that they had planned for had a child, resulting in her absence. Trudy tells Elliot that they don't allow tours of level 2, and offers to bring him to the lobby. When Mobley and Romero try to do some basic research on her, nothing comes up that would help them, making her completely off the grid. Then Mobley has a stroke of genius. To stop her from bringing Elliot out, he spoofs a text from her husband, saying, quote, "It's what we always feared." Now, the only way for Elliot to get to the second level is to reach a door located at the end of the hallway. He rushes through, noticing that the door doesn't lead to the second floor, but actually the parking lot. Elliot must double back around when, oh boy, my favorite character. Elliot lies, simply saying he's doing a routine inspection. Terrell doesn't think much of it, using this time to get to know him a little bit better. They eat in a closed-off corner near the executive lounge, coming into Elliot's plan for infiltration. Terrell begins by making small talk, trying to relate to Elliot a little. Both perfectionists, both willing to put others down or bring them up to get what they want. Terrell says that he's seen this employee work there for many years, his potential locked away because this job was the height of his life. Two cops pull by their table, handing Terrell a document he must sign. Elliot's worries get the best of him, shivering in fear out of being caught. All this anxiety, this panic, this fear. Behind him is a faculty room, located within it a box that connects to all the temperature regulating systems of the facility. Tying the Raspberry Pi to the wires when here he comes. He's here again. Elliot, still panicking, quickly makes a cover for himself. Terrell, as casually as possible, reveals that he knows Elliot framed Terry Colby.
I know you framed Terry Colby.
I didn't.
Your father worked at Evil Corp before he died. That's a matter of public record. I'm not turning you in if that's what you're thinking. And even if I did, I don't care. Just wanted to know your weakness. Now I do. Revenge.
An interesting detail about this scene is how Terrell is portrayed as compared to Elliot. He's so much bigger in the frame, not only height-wise, but also closer to the camera as well. He's a figure, a symbol of power in this moment. Elliot is so weak and insignificant, talked to as if he's worthless. It's funny how this notion is thrown out the window in later seasons, but in the present, he's so much more powerful. As he said himself, he's not human. At this moment, he's a god.
But even extraordinary people, and I believe you are driven by human banalities. And unfortunately, we're all human, except me, of course.
But it turns out that all the hard work Elliot had gone through is all for naught, since the Dark Army banned F Society from their server. We later learn that the Dark Army was never even on board with the mission, Cisco telling Darlene that they had backed out before it had even begun. It's heartbreaking to see all this buildup go to waste. She screams, pushing books down, yelling in a public library. She simply does not care who knows about her problems anymore. After all, she isn't exactly known for being subtle. Now time for Angela, who's meeting up with her dad for some relaxation. Molly had apparently called him, begging for forgiveness. Her dad is very kind about the situation, announcing that she can stay with him until she saves enough money to get an apartment, and that he'll give her some money. To summarize the next interaction, Joanna is very nervous about how content the Knowles are with their current life, telling Terrell that he must take that away from them. As we see more and more of their relationship, it becomes even more evident why they are together. They're just so elegantly toxic, to put it one way or another. They all arrive at the dinner, putting on a facade when they enter. This happy family they pretend to be, the perfect couple with a baby soon arriving. It's not real, and Scott knows it. When the wives start chatting, Terrell uses that opportunity to talk to Scott about whether he's been chosen for CTO. The background is blurred, forcing an emphasis on the two men in front. The funny thing about this exchange is how they're both the same size. No one, just yet, has significant power over each other. They both want to grasp it, but can't because of their own flaws and the advantages the other has, although Terrell is making much more of a swift attempt. Knowing that Scott will potentially become the CTO, he tells him that he could be a good right-hand man. Scott then asks,
"If you were me, would you trust you as your right hand?"
If I were you, I wouldn't have even let me in the house.
It's unsettling, but in that instant, Terrell has gained the power. Elliot, for once, is actually happy. I mean, there's a grin on his face and everything. Shayla briefly calls him, and they have this cute little exchange together. It is, for such a bleak show, somewhat refreshing to see them both happy. Back to the dinner, Terrell keeps picking these strange battles. And albeit not physically, this is indeed a battle. One that's long and drawn out, just like most shonen fighting series. I will be talking about anime, so just bear with me, but this logic applies to every fight. Every fight has a winner and a loser. The loser, typically the villain, will be in power for the majority of the fight, being flamboyant as all hell. Then, in the middle, there's some leeway. Both the winner and loser are at odds with each other. They're even for a brief moment. The loser will reach a second win, forcing the winner, typically the protagonist, into a dark state. And finally, a surge of power flows through the winner, thus allowing them to win. So it's interesting to see how this fight subverts my expectations.
Sharon?
Yeah?
How do you not blow your brains out being married to him?
Excuse me?
Shall I repeat the question?
You're a guest in our house.
Sharon is very respectful about the sly remark, choosing to go to the bathroom instead of initiating a confrontation, but then it gets weird. You see, Terrell follows her into the bathroom, casually walking in. She's confused, but accepts the situation for what it is, questioning whether she's about to be or not. He merely stands in front of her, waiting for something. His face is desolate, not even a semblance of emotion, and she knows exactly what he wants. She slowly spreads her legs, putting her hand back to make everything within his field of view. A smile washes over him, and he thanks her for a lovely evening. In the next scene, we see F Society come to terms with the fact that this whole mission was all for naught. Darlene gets visibly anxious as Mr. Robot, the dominant personality at this moment, kicks things around. Elliot gets a phone call from Shayla, but ignores it, most likely because he isn't dominant currently. Darlene wants to continue with this, wants to make sure she's not the sole reason this whole operation is meaningless. She desperately tries to find a computer to upload the payload, but Mr. Robot stops her, throwing everything to the ground. He tries to tell her that if she were to try and continue, everything would fall apart. Mr. Robot then gives power to Elliot, making him the one in charge. There's also an audio cue that plays, demonstrating to the audience that Mr. Robot will no longer be talking. Darlene begs him to allow her to execute the program, but all she receives is silence. Everyone knows that this has been a failure. Darlene and Elliot are finally building a proper relationship with each other. Once again, it's the little moments that add up to this greater story. As such, Vera, initially thought of as someone who's there for a quick plot point, is now coming back. He believes that he has a close attachment to Elliot and that they were meant to be together. Meanwhile, Angela decides to go on a run, reaching a fork in the road. The symbolism for this is painfully obvious, knowing that she's going down a road she can't come back from. On one side, she can choose to continue her life as normally as possible, picking up a new job and finding a new boyfriend, or, on the other side, she can continue down a path of despair, ultimately leading to her untimely demise. The conclusion to episode 5. This episode begins with Shayla and Elliot sitting together in a small diner, wondering why things have worked out this way. They seem uneasy, like someone is watching them or that they're going to be separated at some point. Elliot leans into her, saying that he's going to get her out of this situation when Vera's brother stands up from the table next to them, grabbing Shayla as forcefully as possible. The accomplice pushes Elliot to his seat, reducing him to nothing. Then, when Shayla is out of the building, he coerces Elliot out of the building as well. He's brought into another room where he calls Vera directly from prison. Naturally, this leads to one of his philosophical monologues, stating that the word brave originally derives from the meaning of the word savage. The interesting thing about this is how Vera's name actually means brave traveler, and it's coincidentally his Twitter handle. He is subtly asking to be broken out of prison, telling Elliot to do his hacker thing. He also promises that Shayla will be with him tonight, which is true to some extent. Now, Elliot has to do something he thought was impossible. Moving back to the monomyth, now Elliot is truly in a world of despair. By the end of this episode, he will be forced to reflect on himself as a person, according to this storytelling technique. It's funny how when you boil things down to the bare bones, they're reliant on things we know so much about. Vera's brother, Isaac, and his accomplice guide Elliot back home. As soon as they reach it, Elliot searches for ways to get out of this situation, opting to hack Isaac's phone. Meanwhile, Angela is finding evidence to help her case against the Washington Township nuclear plant. To abridge, only one lawyer, the same one that helped her when she was a child, seems receptive to even trying to fight the power. They meet with each other and discuss the case. Angela truly believes that she does have a shot at this, but the lawyer disagrees, stating that you can't use internet gossip to destroy the biggest conglomerate the world has ever seen, showing Angela out the door. But before she fully leaves, she says that this lawyer, out of all the ones she called, is the only one to have responded. No matter how difficult this case is, that means something. In another subplot, Darlene has been dropping a bunch of USB drives outside a police department in the hopes that one will pick them up and test them for themselves. Sure enough, one of the officers decides to test it out, inserting it into his computer and beginning the quiz it offers. It's just generic things like, what's your favorite music genre? No biggies. And the officer completely falls for it. But before he can continue, his antivirus kicks into gear, stopping the virus malware from fully downloading. Elliot tries to get out of his current situation, telling Isaac that he needs to walk the dog. They're, at first, very apprehensive about letting him outside, and they eventually let him out, not without watching him, of course. A peculiar detail about, frankly, this entire episode is how Elliot's room isn't framed to be a prison or anything with barriers. Isaac and his accomplice are both framed as these gangsters, willing to do what needs to be done to get their goals, but they're not at all threatening. Take this next exchange, for instance. Elliot circles the block to meet Darlene in a car park, telling her that the code she wrote in the flash drives doesn't work, and that without it, there's no way he can get out of this predicament. She retorts, telling him that she only had an hour to create it. With all the confidence in the world, she announces to Elliot that she's gonna tell the gangsters what's up. As if on cue, the accomplice reveals himself from around the corner, showing how there's a gun in his pants, followed with, "That's what's up, girl."
You don't understand. These guys are...
Assholes? Yeah, I'm gonna tell them what's up.
That's what's up, girl. Let's go.
I know they're supposed to put his life in jeopardy with Shayla being tied up in God knows where, but they aren't in the least bit threatening, and that's because I never saw Vera as a threat. Vera is at the head of these guys. He's the reason all this is happening, the main enemy, if you will. And how can henchmen be more intimidating than the final boss? I don't think they can be. The good thing is that it really subverts your expectations in the end. The fact they're working into that goal. In the next scene, we see Angela still talking to the lawyer, who says that this first case single-handedly destroyed her career. The only way possible for this case to work is if an eyewitness account were to come out of the woodwork and help them. Angela is really trying to push this case, and I wish I could say deep inside, she knew this would never work out, but she has this incredibly childish mindset that everything will work out if she is persistent enough. Obviously, that's not the case, no pun intended. This is Mr. Robot. We don't get happy endings. And I get the point of her character is to teach the audience what happens if we become irrational and eager, but after a while, it becomes annoying. That's mainly why she's my least favorite character. Especially in these earlier episodes, it's frustrating to switch from the A plot, which has all the intensity a viewer could ever want, to the B plot, where Angela's just kind of fed up with her problems. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love this show, but Angela was a bit insufferable after a while.
Is there a change in schedule? I thought I had Spencer next.
Terrell goes to meet with Scott, telling him that it would be in his best interest to play hooky for the rest of the day. All the others shooting for the position of CTO, they don't matter in the eyes of Terrell. Again, we have another fight between these two families, both wanting power over the others. It's a tricky power imbalance at first. Scott states that he's not going anywhere, choosing to stay and continue the interviews, knowing that Terrell is scheming and angry. Terrell fires back, saying he's become paranoid. They're both visibly trying to hide their frustration, Terrell arguably doing a better job than Scott. Then, all of a sudden, Terrell thanks him for the dinner, including giving a specific compliment to Sharon.
Oh, and thank you for dinner. The entire evening was enchanting. The food, the wine, the lovely Sharon. Please tell her I say hello.
Did you enjoy the view?
Now, the funny thing about all this is that it all ties into perception, the main theme of this show. Terrell may act confident and well-assured, but the shot composition contradicts all that. He's tiny, insignificant, whereas Scott fills a decent chunk of the frame, gradually gaining more power as the scene progresses. This power imbalance only gets more blatant when Terrell steps back, no longer even staying as the main focus of the frame whatsoever. This gets worse as Scott begins to dominate even Terrell's shot, asking him to finally accept the fact that he will never receive the position of CTO, and his facade only crumbles even more when Scott makes a sly remark at him. Finally, the grin he bore for so long is finally gone.
Here. I feel bad. After all, you got a child on the way, you need all the help you can get. In fact, this would probably pay off the rest of your mortgage. Aren't you still in that neat little 2-bedroom in Chelsea? There. That's a look I was looking for.
At home, he starts destroying his house, knowing that there's no way out of this. Joanna says that it wasn't all for naught, telling him that there's something they gained from all this. They now know what Sharon wants. She wants to be wanted. Angela shows up at Elliot's door, begging him to let her in. Isaac lets him outside, keeping close surveillance on his whereabouts, not letting Darlene follow behind. Of course, Angela begins talking about how she wants to change the world and how she came into contact with Nayar, their previous lawyer. She can't tell him about it just yet, but she has a fair amount of confidence. Elliot tells her what she wants to hear. Bada bing bada boom, we're done here. He can go back to partial captivity. And for his first appearance of the episode, Mr. Robot rears his head in, saying that the logical thing to do would be to call the cops. Elliot can't do that. With Shayla being his first actual love interest, there's no way he could simply toss that away. Mr. Robot wants him to understand that going down this path will lead to both of them dying. Being the protagonist that he is, there's absolutely no scenario where he won't try to keep her alive. The overwhelming sensation of knowing that multiple people's lives are at stake kicks Elliot into fight or flight. Now with everything climaxing, the only option he has is to fight. He busts in the home, telling Isaac that he knows how to break Vera out of prison, but the only way he can do such an involved act would be to go to the prison at this very instant. There, he meets Vera, telling him the plan. With all correctional facilities, you must leave your belongings in the front. All it takes is for Elliot and Vera's conversation to be long enough to intercept a connection from the prison, thus giving Elliot access to everything about the facility, making him in control. The only way to break him out without the police suspecting it's Elliot is to break everyone out. Yeah, it turns into a prison break. The shot composition for this scene too is very enticing. Vera takes up basically all of the screen, and yet Elliot is limited to a corner, a complete contradiction of what's actually happening. Forget about Shayla for a moment and see how they are interacting in the present. Elliot right now is in charge. This is also because Isaac's phone is currently hacked. The agreement set between them is that once the prison break happens, Shayla and Elliot will no longer be in contact with Vera. If he even comes near them, all his money will vanish in the blink of an eye. Elliot goes back and tells Isaac that he has a way to get his brother back. Isaac doesn't seem that happy about the situation, forcefully telling Elliot to get in the car so he can have a private chat with him. Elliot is confused, but he is compliant, and with a gun scraping the back of his head, finally he can make sense of everything. Isaac never wanted Vera out of prison. It was his goal for him to be in prison. The only way for Isaac to survive all this is if he believes Elliot, allowing Vera to run freely out of the prison. Vera knows that Isaac is the reason he's in this hellhole. Hence the constant tweets documenting their every crime. Yeah, nobody's that dumb. Obviously. It's a matter of who kills the other first, and the best card to be played now is to let Vera out. Isaac removes the gun after a second's worth of contemplation. To fully execute the plan, Darlene walks up to a cop car located near the prison and sniffs out the IP of his computer, sending it to Elliot where he can remotely access it. A terminal displays on the cop's computer, meaning that Darlene has to keep this guy's focus for as long as possible to let Elliot completely gain access. Then Elliot abruptly states that Darlene is no longer a part of this mission, ordering Isaac's accomplice to drive. Isaac, now knowing Elliot's mental capabilities and the situation he faces, agrees, but not without sticking a gun to Elliot's face. At night, they return to watch the prison break unfold. First, a power surge from all the cell doors opening at once. None of the networks will register the doors as open, giving all the inmates ample time to remove themselves. They have roughly 2 minutes until the alarm blares. You can hear the sound effects of them all clamoring to get out. Glass breaking, gunshots being fired, pushing down the fence, and now Vera is officially freed. To no one's surprise, he orders Isaac's accomplice to shoot his little brother forthwith. A single bang and Isaac collapses to the floor. A car pulls around for Vera. Elliot quickly asks him about Shayla's whereabouts before he enters. Promptly, Vera tosses him keys to the car, telling him that she was with him the entire time. You can tell Elliot is frightened, more so than he's ever been in the show up until this point. As such, the camera switches to handheld, clearly symbolic of his sheer terror. There she is, bloodied, killed, rotting. This entire episode, just like Steel Mountain, has led to a point of defeat. Elliot doesn't cry, he doesn't yell, hell, he doesn't even emote. He's just broken. The conclusion to episode 6. This episode begins with Elliot walking home and into his apartment, preparing to take some morphine, a clear indication that this is a flashback. If it wasn't obvious enough, Shayla starts knocking on his door, to which Elliot lets her in. She has a fish, telling him that he needs to name it and, not kill it. So, yeah, they have this really sweet interaction outside, detailing how Shayla became his dealer. It's nothing big, essentially them making small talk, but it ends with her reaching out her hand and properly introducing herself. Elliot naturally hesitates a little bit, his instincts kicking in, but he goes through with it. And that's how you know, since this is their first interaction, that they were meant to be friends. The title card plays as upbeat music sounds, Shayla drifting into the background, becoming one with the blur. Then, silence. It's been 52 hours with Krista, and now she wants to get rid of him, asking him to sign a form that would release him of the court order. In the next scene, we see Angela and Nayar talking with Colby's lawyers, making their attempt at receiving an interview. Colby's lawyers state that Angela, just like she did with Elliot, is unable to tell them what substantial evidence she has. Nayar reassures them that they've worked together for 20 years, and that they are the only hope that Colby has left. Seth, Colby's lawyer, takes the offer, saying that he'll relay the information upward. Elliot is brought into Gideon's office, who then asks him if he wants any time off. The strange thing about this scene is how the lighting of the room doesn't fit at all how Elliot is feeling. It's bright and cheery, illustrating how Gideon is this symbol of hospitality and wellness. Gideon offers him some time off, saying that he deserves it after the death of his girlfriend. Elliot thinks to himself about what it would be like if we had access to other people's source code. How much easier life would be if we could see exactly what they wanted and how they were feeling when they were feeling it. Sure, there's music blaring in the background, but it doesn't encapsulate how Elliot feels whatsoever. Instead, both him and the show itself are putting up a front. They're hiding how they truly feel from us. The lighting, the composition, how Elliot is acting, it's all in an attempt to make us feel like everything's alright. Feel like everything's okay, even when that couldn't be farther from the truth. The only way for things to possibly get better is if Steel Mountain was to be hacked again, which is exactly what Mr. Robot wants. He wants Starlene to get the attention of the Dark Army once again, but she says she's been trying to do that for a month now, using Cisco's handle. Mr. Robot talks about potentially getting a meeting with White Rose. Darlene calls him insane, but on the inside, she knows he's right. Now, a key lesson for storytelling. This is how you slowly build an overarching villain. You add subtle hints throughout the show, maybe even irrelevant to whatever it is they're talking about. You slowly, methodically build them up as a sight to behold. Someone with an insane amount of power, whether it be political or like energy-based. And in Dragon Ball, I think I used that example. I used the LMAO, right? Whatever. There's still so much mystery about White Rose that it gets the audience to wonder what the deal is with her. You know practically nothing about her except for the fact that she's a force to be reckoned with. It keeps the viewers engaged and wanting more from the show, even without knowing it. And when they're finally unveiled, the show writer should keep it brief. It's only the first meeting, after all. There still needs to be a level of mystery to them, and you can assemble them piece by piece in the future. But since this is the very beginning, give as little information as possible, while keeping intrigue high. Terrell, once seen as a symbol of authority, is now weak, and it's been shown time and time again that all his efforts are futile. This next scene is him trying to gain some of that power back, listening to some executives talk about how devoted they are to business, rather than keeping up with their families. Terrell asks one of them how their children are, and their first response is, "Hell if I know." That's a Sigma male thing to say. The exec says that he sent one of his daughters away to Lawrence, laughing by saying she enjoys art. And then this happens.
I think Julia likes art. Can't win them all. You'll never be able to afford that tuition and unemployment. Sorry? You're fired! You're fired. You're fired.
One of them begs for an answer, the camera focusing solely on Terrell, the others fading into the background. Terrell has no proper answer, saying that they did nothing. That's the truth. Dude, I'm reading the script and I'm envisioning the scene in my mind, and it's just so funny. I'm gonna show it verbatim. Terrell just wanted to feel powerful again, but his mind can't wander from Scott and Sharon Knowles. As we've seen before with him destroying his kitchen, he's impulsive and volatile. That's only gotten worse with time. It makes you wonder what he will do next. Nayar informs Angela that Colby's lawyers have agreed to give Angela an interview, on the order that they get complete and total immunity. The issue is that Nayar cannot be in the room with Angela when she interviews Colby. She asks Angela if she still wants to do this. No reply is given, but we know from her past actions that the answer is, in fact, yes. Although this next interaction is somewhat important, it can be condensed very easily. Romero wants to quit despite giving his word that he would follow through with this mission in the beginning. Mr. Robot sticks a gun to his head, joking around and smashing a few bottles, and promises Romero that he will do it if he isn't back at the arcade. The interview between Angela and Colby begins, Angela setting her terms right off the bat. She says the following.
But I promise you, at the end of the day, money will always be better than what you're looking for.
I have information which can help you if you answer my question.
I don't know what you're talking about.
If you agree to testify against the executives who covered up the illegal dumping of epoxy resin waste, I will testify that I broke chain of custody with a DAT file central to your case.
It's a good deal, but Colby just had to ruin it. He says he remembers her from a month ago, when she tried to get an interview initially. He moves to his desk, saying that he's willing to answer her question, but on one term.
Okay, I'm going to answer your question, but here's what I need from you first. So I'm going to pull down my pants, and then I'm going to need you to take that pouty mouth of yours and swallow up my balls. They're big and hairy, especially the left ones. You're really going to have to, I don't know, squish them up to get them inside there.
Hey, Jeffrey Epstein, I heard what you did, and that isn't very
For funny PG reasons, I'm not gonna say what he said. But yeah, it wasn't family-friendly Ryan Toy Reviews unboxing part 59, if you catch my drift. She doesn't agree to his terms, instead saying that if he doesn't take this deal, he'll become like her. Everyone, personal or unknown, has lost respect for her. Somehow, shortly after she leaves, Colby requests that she comes back. Apparently, her words actually got to him. Their conversation is strange, and no one tries to get power over the other person, or at least it's not blatantly obvious they are. Angela asks him about what it was like to sign those documents, allowing for the leakage to be completely ignored. Colby goes on a story, saying his secretary brought them shrimp cocktails. His memory fails him, showing how insignificant this day was in the grand scheme of his career. The only true thing he could remember was that it was raining. Angela seems heartbroken, now knowing that the man who killed her mother in that moment was drunk and eating shrimp cocktails. Not a single care in the world. He says that life goes on. You eat dinner, you wake up the next day. Soon, it'll be a distant memory, a relic of the past, a forgotten time in the most literal sense of the word. Darlene briefly meets with Cisco in a public park. Lovers' quarrel ensues, they break up, but on the contrary, that meeting with White Rose that Darlene thought was impossible will actually happen. You can only hide a villain for so long and keep the interest of the people. There's no way White Rose was going to hide for an entire season without being revealed in some regard. Scott Knowles has been officially announced as the CTO of Evil Corp. There's a huge party, and, of course, it wouldn't be a celebration without Terrell and Joanna Wellick. Jesus, I am not looking forward to their interactions. Anyway, Terrell is annoyed, albeit not visibly, that Sharon told Scott about the moment they had, to which she says she's sensing defeat. Naturally, Terrell isn't satisfied with this. He asks Sharon to meet him in his office, to which she initially rejects, because she basically got last time, so I wouldn't go there either. He mentions that if she takes the back stairwell and meets him on the roof, no one will know of their heinous conduct. There's a short scene next, where Gideon speaks with Angela directly, telling her that if she goes through with this case, and tells everyone that she's broken the chain of custody, all safe will fall, along with all of the employees in it. Sharon follows Terrell upstairs, saying how disappointed she is, wondering if this is where the rabbit hole ends. He's visibly frustrated, knowing that, as Joanna said, she wants to be wanted. Suddenly, he grabs her for a kiss, dark music abruptly sounding. She hesitates for a moment, but then lets him onto her. What starts as making out then devolves into his hands wrapping around her throat, her legs kicking, gasping for air. Music gets louder. Everything we've seen with Terrell leading up to this moment. The murder of Sharon Knowles. Then, stop. He releases his hands, and the music halts with him, checking to see if there's any kind of pulse on her neck. Nothing. The realization sets in, now knowing that there's nothing he can do to reverse this. Two quick scenes happen next. The first one, Darlene trying to convince Trenton to come back and see the mission through. The second, Cisco coming into contact with Ollie and telling him that he needs to do something to save himself. The next one is rough. Elliot voluntarily meets back with Krista, now deciding to be completely and totally truthful. Certainly, she can't decline. He admits to not taking his prescription, following it by saying that she doesn't either. He tells her that he hacks everyone and that he's been watching her for a while. Elliot knows practically everything about her. Her hopes and dreams, her insecurities, her loneliness. As a final request, Elliot asks her how to escape from all this fear that's built up over the years. The conclusion to episode 7. This episode begins with Darlene in a random apartment building with a man, presumably a hookup. The man seems fond of her, leaving to go to work shortly after. She uses that time to check through his closet, noticing that there is a safe. She opens it, somehow knowing the combination, and pulls a gun out from it. We cut to her walking into a ballet class, meeting with Angela, of all people. They complain about how they are constantly worried about Elliot taking the fall for him on so many occasions, subtly implying that all three of them have been friends for a long time. On the train ride back, she notices that she's being watched. It's clear that there are Dark Army members. They walk by her, one telling the other that they need to follow the proper commands, or else the sequence won't initiate. Darlene holds her gun throughout all of this, prepared to strike, although they walk away right after saying this. F Society is now back together, scheming about how they can follow through on the plan. Everyone has a definitive role, all building to this overarching conclusion. Elliot tries to walk out, Darlene stopping him and handing him the gun. She desperately wants to give him her phone number for safety reasons. Again, more and more hints to her being Elliot's sister. To the audience, she's always had a strange attachment to him, one that couldn't be explained with Elliot being an unreliable narrator. She never had a clue. Darlene tries to give him the gun, but he doesn't take it, stating that he doesn't even know how to use one. As he leaves, she places it in the popcorn dispenser for safekeeping. Back to Terrell, who now needs to bear the burden of killing a woman. This is one of the best scenes in the show. The fact that you don't need any context for it. You just know that something is off about this man. The camera stays in his face, keeping him solidly the main focus of the frame. It's handheld, meaning it can convey his panic and frustration with having to walk past all his coworkers, not knowing what he's done. Everyone, from his assistant to the man he bumps into, are all blurred and shown as small, little details. The only thing that's perfectly clear is Terrell, symbolizing how much he's focusing on himself rather than other people. He's scared and trying to hide it. The facade is peeling, credibility falling. This man is becoming a shell of what he used to be. In this one scene, it encapsulates all of that. Anxiety, distress, anger, everything. It's genius. He meets with Gideon, relaying all the information we already know, specifically about the server that was hacked in the beginning of the season. He also tells Terrell that he's turned the hacked server into a honeypot, a script of code that's supposed to detect and deflect unauthorized usage of the server. Once Gideon leaves, Terrell does his own investigation, looking into CS30, the server. He notices that his permission to get in has been denied, per Elliot's doing. His assistant, Elizabeth, walks in. He angrily tells her that he did not want to be bothered today. Confidently, she states that the police are here. He plays it off like he doesn't know anything, asking who they found on the roof that night. No proper information has gone through. All they know is that he wants to speak with Terrell. He rejects, saying that the only way they can get into contact with him would be to create an appointment beforehand. It's pretty sketchy. Meanwhile, at Allsafe, everyone is swamped with work, trying to deal with a sudden hack. Ollie's there. Oh my god, Ollie is there. And he meets Elliot using words like bro and dude. And this character makes me want to push an old woman down a flight of stairs. To keep it brief, because this guy sucks, he wants Elliot to deliver a bunch of CDs to a place that'll buy them by 2 o'clock today, saying that it's more of an order than a favor. Elliot agrees, very complexed as to why Ollie's armpits are more moist than a brothel. He walks away, Elliot immediately checking to see what's up. He hacks into Ollie's email, seeing a bunch of spam from Angela. Now we can understand the full story. We cut to Terrell again, talking about how they need to reassess their focus. Joanna reassures him that everything will go their way and that he will be deemed CTO. She mentions that he only slept with her, signaling that he hasn't told her about the murder yet. Joanna's body language contradicts her words. She sounds so sure that everything will work out, but she scrubs away, frustrated and angry, almost as if she doesn't believe herself. After reading the emails, Elliot goes to speak with Angela about the hack. She's livid, wanting to know what's been happening to Elliot. He, out of what I can only imagine is fear, locks up, not saying much. She just wants the past to come back, as does Elliot. In his inner monologue, we hear him say that hackers block things off, and that there will forever be a divide between him and Angela. It's cut to a fountain, a large partition in the middle, cutting the water into two halves. Symbolism for how they are. Both in tech, both losing everything, and yet they can't bond, only little streams of water passing over. There's a beauty in their sadness.
We were being pressured. He gave Ollie a CD that infected his laptop. Stole his pictures, his emails, and browser cache. He said to install the disk at AllSafe, or he would leak everything online.
You should have come to me.
I told you, you weren't there. You're never there anymore. Something is going on with you, Elliot. You have not been the same the past couple of months, and this happened before Shayla. You don't talk to me anymore. Just tell me what to do here, because the only solution I can think of is to give up.
Finally, the fabled White Rose meeting. He goes to the CD shop, someone unknown letting him in. Inside, there's a room designed to stop electromagnetic interference, meaning that no one can hack. All the power in this room is what you make. There, she steps in to the frame, saying that she's a busy woman, and that Elliot has only been allotted 3 minutes of her time, as there are 17 other things on her agenda. She kind of reminds me of Edna Mode. I didn't write this in the script, I'm just thinking it now. It's kind of funny. In this meeting, he learns that Gideon Goddard's suspicion led him to planting a honeypot in the server, all because he refused to stick to the original mission and instead hacked Terry Colby. Now, he knows that Gideon has been surveilling him ever since the suspicion first arose. Elliot says he'll find a way to remove the honeypot, which disturbs her, as it means he wasn't aware of it in the first place. She says that,
"Find a way to remove the honeypot." Until 16 seconds ago, you were not aware there was a honeypot. This does not inspire confidence. Wait, every hacker has her fixation. You hack people, I hack time. Fucking shit! Is that a motherfucking joke? When I set a timeline, there's a reason. You have 50 hours and 23 minutes. At that point, when all parties are ready, we will initiate the hack.
Giving Elliot 50 hours and 23 minutes to prepare. If all parties are ready by then, the hack will initiate. To calm down, he calls Darlene, asking for her assistance, breaking the one rule they had. Darlene sends 100 large MMS files to Gideon's phone, thus fully draining the battery life. Suddenly, the TV turns off in one of the rooms, playing an F Society video. Lloyd swears, alerting everyone that something strange is happening. Everyone goes into the room. Everyone, except for Elliot. This is a distraction. A code is shown on Gideon's phone, giving Elliot 60 seconds to log in, or else this was all for naught. In the blink of an eye, Gideon notices that Elliot is not in the room. Rushing out, he immediately asks Elliot what he's doing. Everyone was in that room, watching as their company slowly falls, and he's over here doing work. Ollie notifies Gideon that Evil Corp is on the phone, postponing the conversation until later. When Elliot sifted through Gideon's files, he says that he saw nothing but a good and honest man. To protect the company, he then requests for the honeypot to be removed. Terrell desperately needs Mr. Robot's help, resulting in his refusal of cooperation.
I have to know what you're planning. We were meant to be allies. We might just want the same thing, and I need to be involved.
I'm pretty positive you're dead wrong about that, my friend.
I don't know what game you're playing, but I suggest you cut the bullshit. Aren't you forgetting that I know your dirty little secret?
Either way, Terrell is in no position to do any harm to him, and thus Mr. Robot leaves the car. At home, distorted music plays, and Terrell breaks down in front of Joanna. He says that he's been looking at all this the wrong way, focusing on the wrong players when he should have just been focusing on the real thing that can bring all his plans to fruition. Elliot Alderson.
Vi har varit helt förblindade av fel fokus på fel personer från första början. För några månader sedan så såg jag en göra någonting, dra nytta av. Jag trodde först att det handlade om hem, men det visade sig att det är någonting fantastiskt. Och vi har bara tittat rakt fram hela tiden efter det vi verkligen vill ha.
Och vad är det så råas?
Gud, du har tvingat mig hit.
Just then, someone knocks on their door. It's the detectives, requesting to speak with him. Joanna has no idea what's happening, speaking in a foreign language to Terrell when she learns about the murder. He is strangely adamant about them not speaking to him, very obviously arising suspicion.
As I know you're aware, we were hoping to speak with you at your office, but your assistant said you're out.
What's this about?
We're investigating a murder that occurred at your husband's place of employment, ma'am. May we please come in?
A murder? That's not gonna...
Do you mind speaking in English, please?
When the detectives say who was found dead, Joanna has a look on her face. One that illustrates a woman realizing that her husband killed a woman the day prior. She invites them in for questioning. Before he can answer anything, Joanna stabs herself, breaking her own water as a distraction. Even with knowing that Terrell killed someone, she is still committed to pushing forward. Elliot and Darlene meet at Coney Island, Darlene informing him that the climate control fiasco went well. Elliot says that this is cause for celebration. It's quiet at first, but you can tell they're both very pleased with themselves, pleased with the fact that they could persevere so heavily. Naturally, Darlene screams in excitement, telling Elliot how he's the only one who could do all this, how he saved the world. She calls him the best person she knows and tells him she loves him so much. And then, this happens.
Really, this was you. I love you so much.
Oh my God, Elliot, what the fuck?
I'm sorry.
What the hell is wrong with you?
I'm sorry.
Oh my God, Elliot. Did you forget again? Did you forget who I am?
What do you mean?
Elliot, I need you to tell me who you think I am.
What are you talking about?
Tell me right now. Elliot.
You're Darlene. I know. I know what she's going to say.
I'm your
sister.
She orders him to tell her who he thinks she is. Then it clicks in. She's his sister. Everything comes back to him. All the past events with her in it. All the childhood memories. Everything forgotten comes swinging like a hurricane. In his home, he looks into a mirror. Mr. Robot, the F Society mask, himself, who is he? Elliot smashes the window, throwing his phone across the room when Darlene tries to contact him. He tries to hack himself, but nothing comes up. Questioning everything he knows, he looks into the CD files he keeps, seeing if there's anything on him. Sure enough, there it is. Looking through the file, all there is are photos of Elliot and Mr. Robot. Dozens upon dozens of photos forgotten. On the shelf, Elliot pulls down an old family photo. There he is, once again. Then, slamming on his door. Speak of the devil. Mr. Robot is ready to talk. The conclusion to episode 8. The episode begins with Mr. Robot picking up a call behind the front desk of a shop, saying that he can offer whomever's on the line an 800 megabyte hard drive, indicating that this is a flashback. A man walks in through the door, Mr. Robot hanging up the phone and asking if his mouse is still working, to which the man replies that Elliot stole money from him. Mr. Robot tries to defend Elliot, saying there's no need to yell, but the man is very adamant about getting his money back. He says he doesn't have time for this. Why did I write kerfuffle? I wrote kerfuffle in my script. He doesn't have time for this kerfuffle. What was I doing? And that Mr. Robot needs to give him his money back. And to his surprise, Mr. Robot rejects. He's dismayed, telling Mr. Robot that he should call the cops, saying that he's a terrible father for permitting his son to steal. Just like Terrell said about the waiter in Steel Mountain, the man brings up how his life's worth has been maxed out in a low-end tech store. Mr. Robot sighs, placing down his newspaper and asking Elliot to come out of the back room. The back rooms. I'm getting so distracted reading this. Elliot immediately confesses to not stealing it. Mr. Robot simply looks at him and asks Elliot to show him the money. There's a brief moment of silence between the two of them. This is the first scene to show us how Elliot got into tech, and although it didn't happen or is heavily embellished to preserve purity, it does give us some insight into Elliot as a character.
Time Cop or Stargate?
Mr. Robot asks him. Elliot instead picks on Pulp Fiction, which is a good choice considering neither of those movies have over 55% on Rotten Tomatoes. Mr. Robot coughs, showing that he is currently battling leukemia. They both leave the store, revealing the title of the show on top. A small thing to notice is the score of this scene. It should be a happy moment with the two of them watching a movie together.
Come on, let's go. It starts in 15 minutes. I want to get some popcorn. Come on.
From the Season 1 perspective, it may be because Mr. Robot has leukemia and it might as well be one of their last fun moments together. But from a Season 4 perspective, you know that none of this is real. His perfect image of his father is just a hoax, just like everything in this world. A time-lapse ensues, showing how the building has changed over the years, and, in the end, it becomes a bank for Evil Corp. We cut to Elliot face-to-face with Mr. Robot, amazed at the fact that he's really, in heavy quotation marks, here. In an instant of desperation, Elliot throws him to the wall, bellowing at Mr. Robot to tell him why he never said anything. He says that he was trying to handle the situation gently, knowing that Elliot isn't in the greatest of mental states at the moment. Naturally, they argue a bit before Mr. Robot guides him to a window, showing him how the men in black are currently outside. Mr. Robot goes on a tangent, saying that many people want him dead, saying that them connecting is a risk in itself. Paranoia, anxiety, confusion, fear, it's all there. Even with the men in black supposedly snooping on him, he doesn't care, devoted to figuring out what's happening. In the end, they leave the building together, going to an unknown location. Moving on to Gideon and Harry, the former of whom is severely stressed and preparing for work. It's just a cute scene. I'm just gonna summarize it because it's cute. I like it. Harry notices this, offering for them to have breakfast in bed. Gideon speedruns through his breakfast, Harry asking if he's even enjoying it. Gideon is incredibly stressed, knowing that this could be not only the end of his company, but also his career. For a cybersecurity company to fail in their one department of expertise, even if they were to survive, it'd leave them in a dire state. And as a result of such panic, Gideon is taking it out on Harry, albeit in subtle ways. He finishes his monologue by quietly stating that he's a failure. Harry reassures him, making it clear that the fact they have this relationship and can live this well is not a sign of failure. I know this is a minor scene, but it's only sweetened by knowing that when Gideon was hacked by Elliot, he's seen as only a good man. It doesn't hold that much importance, but I thought it was nice, so goddammit, you're gonna like it as well. In the next scene, we see Angela talk to Nayar about the case, saying she quit her job and wants to be employed by the business firm. Niar states that she can't work here, not giving a proper explanation as to why. In her current financial and occupational position, there's no way she can acquire another job in tech. After she leaves the building, Darlene calls her, concerned about Elliot, muttering that he's tripping out once again. Darlene also remarks that the last time this had happened, Angela was the one who found him. They transition to a museum, noticing that Elliot is nowhere to be found. Angela tells Darlene that she can't help her, saying that she doesn't truly know Elliot anymore, once again referencing the switch at the beginning of the show. She says that Elliot hasn't been the same since Darlene reconnected with him, inquiring about why they spend so much time together. Darlene asks for her to back off, stating that helping your brother requires no explanation. Angela has had enough, walking out and telling Darlene that the only circumstance where she helps is if she starts telling the truth about what's happening between Elliot and her. Moving back to Elliot and Mr. Robot, they're now at a train station, Mr. Robot asking him if he remembers anything about this place. Elliot says he does, and begins talking about a game he used to play. Using the statistical probability of each car derailing, he would use that information and take the safest car to see Mr. Robot. And on the way back, he would always take the most dangerous one, furthering his connection between him and his fake father. Just then, a man in black walks up to them, saying, "I thought that was you." A moment of panic ensues, only for him to walk to a woman behind them. As I said before, this is probably a real person that Elliot is misinterpreting as the enemy. They get on the train, Elliot watching as Mr. Robot stares at something. Through the gap of the chair, he sees the man in black sitting behind them, reading a newspaper. Terrell and Joanna have just had their child, recovering in the hospital together. Joanna says how much she loves the child, even though it was just born, and that it reminds her of someone. Terrell asks who, to no proper response. She begins telling a story of her past, how she had to sign many papers to put a child up for adoption. Joanna goes on to say that she can't forgive herself for what she's done. Terrell tries to aid her, but she turns away, telling him to not touch her.
Jag prövar släta hver dag från min hukommelse. Det var en förfärlig ting jag gjorde.
Johanna, du borde ha berättat för mig. Jag är din man, jag älskar dig.
Du ska ikke røre. Jeg gider dig ikke mere.
Vad är det du säger?
Jeg har ikke lyst til at være gift med en mand som dig mere.
Then an ultimatum is brought up. Either Terrell fixes this situation at Evil Corp with Sharon's murder, or as a married couple, they are done. This man's life is shattering before him. To simplify the next scene, Gideon goes to pick up the drives that Elliot had left in the disc shop a while ago, only to see that the building has been completely torched, assumably because of the Dark Army. Terrell goes back to Evil Corp, rushing in his room and missing the fact that Philip Price is sitting right next to them. He asks if it was a boy or a girl. Friendly banter. Terrell thanks Philip for the flowers, to which he says it was Anwar that sent them. I wonder why. They go on to talk about the Sharon Knowles situation, Philip jokingly saying that it was relayed to him that Terrell is a person of interest in this case. A thing to notice is that the lighting for this room is very bright, maybe conveying how Philip feels about it. He states that this development was found because Terrell had made advances on Sharon. Philip says that he doesn't believe it. Terrell is an easy target to lash out on. The death of a wife clearly getting to Scott, so there's no reason for it not to be absurd. Yet the problem still remains. Terrell needs to be let go from Evil Corp. This next moment is fantastic. The camera zooms in on Terrell's face, much like it did episodes prior in his first appearance at work after Sharon's death.
Scott will continue here, but you, I'm afraid, cannot.
I'm not sure what you're saying, Philip.
You know exactly what I'm saying.
Philip, you can't do
can't! I've killed myself for this company! I've been promoted faster than anyone else!
You're gonna suck this cup clean!
You know, I can't deny I tried picturing your reaction. I mean, it could have gone any number of ways, but now, confronted with the reality, I have to say I'm disappointed.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
There's a moment of silence between them, Terrell saying he doesn't fully understand what's happening. Philip encourages him by saying he knows exactly what was meant. The score pumps up, creating this distorted atmosphere, really conveying how this man is about to lose his wife. He yells, screaming that Philip can't do this. This is panic vocalized. He begs for a second chance, grabbing onto Philip's hand. The shot composition in this moment sells it. Philip is above all this, having nothing to do with the investigation, knowing that he will be perfectly fine after all this. But Terrell is sitting down, a height disparity between them. This once all-powerful man is now reduced to nothing. Philip pulls his hand away, walking out of the room. When he leaves the building, he walks by the two investigators from earlier, completely ignoring their calls. He's not prepared to accept defeat just yet.
Mr. Willick,
You can't keep ignoring us.
if you have any questions, contact my lawyer. If you have evidence against me, charge me.
Moving back to Elliot and Mr. Robot, they've now entered his childhood home, walking into the bedroom. Elliot asks him if he remembers anything about the window, Mr. Robot pushing past him, saying that they should go. Elliot shoves him through the window, the glass shattering to the floor. Mr. Robot begs him to not push him out, saying the only reason this happened is because he was angry at himself, making it clear that it's time to let go. Elliot agrees, letting Mr. Robot go and splatter on the floor. Gideon is trying to keep the server a honeypot, a complete paradox to what Elliot sent Evil Corp. The employee on the phone mentions that they have specific orders from Terrell to follow through with removing the honeypot. Although nothing is shown, it's very obvious that Gideon knows that this is Elliot's doing. From here, Darlene is trying to get in contact with Angela. They go to Elliot's old home, reacquainting themselves with this place that they haven't seen for years. The owner of the residence comes out, prompting the two to leave out the back right before they're seen. When they leave, they see glass on the ground, leading from Elliot's previous room. The camera focuses on Darlene before they switch scenes, indicating that she knows precisely what's happened. At a cemetery, Elliot helps limping Mr. Robot to a headstone, confused as to why they're there. Mr. Robot grabs him, telling him that Darlene and Angela are going to try and separate them, the two running at them. He promises to never leave Elliot before falling to the ground before a headstone. Elliot, distraught, yells at Angela and Darlene for them to explain to him what Mr. Robot was saying. Darlene asks him who he's talking to. He's confused for a second, looking down at the headstone to see that Mr. Robot has evaporated, dissipated into thin air. Darlene tells him that he's bleeding, the effect of the fall setting in. No longer are we in Elliot's perception of the world, but instead Darlene's. Quietly, as everything sets in, Elliot's inner monologue states that he is, in fact, Mr. Robot. Back at the train, Angela tells him that she envies him. Hold on. Can I just say how much I hate this character? After everything you've seen, this is the response. Wrong time. Darlene sits next to him, asking him to talk for a brief moment. He says he doesn't want to which she replies that she has to know. Does he remember when they first formed F Society? Gideon tries to get a meeting with Terrell, to which Elizabeth, his assistant, says he's been let go. He then tries to get one with Scott Knowles and is told off-screen of Sharon's death. Angela gets home from everything to see her father sitting at the dinner table with Terry Colby. She asks him if this is about the case. He states that it isn't and that it's his lawyer's fault for that, really encapsulating how little he cares about this. Colby makes a sly remark, making fun of her for losing her career in pursuit of winning a legal battle against the biggest company in the world.
I was impressed by you. Career's finished, but you played a great short game. You took a big gamble and you got what you wanted. It was just, the wrong thing to want.
I mean, when you put it like that, it does sound a bit stupid. I don't really like Angela. I think I've said this before. Despite that, Colby makes it clear that he was really touched by her ambition to the point that he's willing to offer her a job. She takes it poorly since this guy is super scummy.
I think I can land you a pretty lucrative gig.
A gig? Where?
Your favorite place. Where else?
He goes on to say that when the leak initially did happen, they created a fund just for this occasion, and since then, it's made 5 times the amount necessary to win against Angela. This is a game to him. His power knows no bounds, especially to someone that no longer even has a career. She asks him to leave, stating again that this company killed her mother. Colby starts saying that humans are destroying the world and McDonald's is delivering diabetes to families across the country, and yet she's taking all this so personally. He shows himself out, leaving Angela to ponder the conversation in disbelief. Next, Darlene and Elliot are at home together. Darlene wanting to finish the scripts to get this show on the road. Elliot can't help but feel like none of this matters. The barrier between reality and fiction has been broken by a single event. She tries to convince him to take his meds, but he declines, unsure about everything. Darlene leaves, Elliot still planted on the couch in a state of semi-denial. And then, all of a sudden, this happens.
Is it?
The hell are you? I've been waiting outside your apartment until she left. Didn't want anyone to know I'm here. I have society, a server, Colby, all safe. You're the one constant in a sea of variables.
Terrell knows of Elliot's involvement in all that's been happening, describing him as the, quote, one constant in a sea of variables. He orders Elliot to tell him what the plan is, removing his coat and, once again, putting on medical gloves, admitting to the fact that he strangled Sharon Knowles to death.
2 days ago, I strangled a woman to death, just with my hands. It's a strange sensation. Something so tremendous done by something so simple. First 10 seconds were uncomfortable, feeling of limbo. But then your muscles tense and she struggles and fights, but it almost disappears in the background along with everything else in the world.
His face is veiled in darkness. Terrell describes the sensation he felt while killing her, saying that, in the end, it was nothing but him and absolute power. This is what he wanted. Throughout this entire story, he has tried to grasp onto that feeling, being unable to for the majority of its runtime, but then, that was his moment of pride. Who would have guessed that the single greatest thing that has happened to him was also the one to finish him? The music that sets in is filled with wonder and amazement, a juxtaposition to this man threatening Elliot's life. Elliot guides him to the arcade, telling him about all that F Society and him have been doing this whole time. It's a strange scene, but it ends beautifully.
How long has this been going on?
I don't know.
And what is it that you're doing exactly?
Encrypting all the files. All of Evil Corp's financial records will be impossible to access.
What about the backups?
I took care of that too.
Who else was involved?
Just me.
Well, now it's you and me. I've always told you we'd end up working together, Elliot. What did you hope to accomplish by doing all of this?
I wanted to save the world.
The conclusion to episode 9. This episode begins with Lenny Shannon, the man that cheated on Krista, going out to dinner with her. She asks him, how advanced is it? Hinting at him having some kind of disease or illness. She says that she's contacted the right people, to which he cuts her off, saying he's not really dying.
I'm not dying.
You're a sick motherfucker. Don't you ever call me again.
One of your patients hacked me. A kid. His name's Elliot Alderson. I went to the police already. Please, sit back down. We need to talk about this.
In the heat of anger, Krista yells at him, preparing to walk off, until he mentions something that triggers a part of her brain she's been trying to turn off. Lenny had been hacked, medical records altered by Elliot Alderson. Krista agrees to sit back down, willing to discuss Elliot. We learn that the cybercrime division has been trying to track down Elliot for 6 weeks. They were able to do so because the dog he stole had a microchip in it. I know this is a serious moment, but there's something really funny about stealing a dog when confronting someone with a false identity. No one? Just me? Okay. Krista then learns that Elliot is the reason they broke up in the first place. After going on a little tangent, Lenny says that he's probably not the only one, bringing up the possibility of Krista being hacked as well. Her face says it all. She tries to walk away, only for Lenny to grab her. His argument devolves into manipulative ramblings, saying that they were good together. Which is why I'm very happy to say she walks away. Somewhere deep inside, she still cares about Elliot deeply. Lenny goes home, turning on his TV. There, visuals of chaos are displayed. The hack worked. Elliot wakes up in a random car, as I do every Tuesday morning, someone knocking on the window for him to wake up. He asks the man where he is, the man replying by saying that he's been parked there for 3 days, also saying that he needs cash because the credit card systems are down. Elliot walks off, not caring if the car is towed or not. So it turns out that Angela, with no other option, in complete desperation, decided to take the gig at Evil Corp. You are a traitor. We don't like you. Elliot goes back to the arcade, meeting with the others, wondering how this came to be. This is the second instance in the show of Mr. Robot fully taking over Elliot's body. No longer are they partners in crime. Now it's one or the other, and in that night, it was Mr. Robot that Terrell bonded with. The first instance came with Terrell's meeting with Mr. Robot in his car. News articles all across the nation reiterating the same thing. Countries all across the world are in a state of lockdown. Moving to Gideon, there's simply no viable option he has besides closing down Allsafe. The financial consultant he's talking to presumes that the best course of action would be to tell all the employees that they no longer have jobs. She also mentions that everyone's 401ks were tied in this hack as well. He copes, declaring that it's only speculation. Deny, 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 as Roderick said. He doesn't want this to be real. For the weekend, both of them were entirely unable to use their credit cards. The only positive thing about this situation to them is the fact that they no longer have any debt. On one hand, no working credit card and not being able to pay things, but on the other, no student loans, so, I mean, that's pretty good. Elliot is on a search for Terrell, going to Evil Corp's offices directly. There he finds Elizabeth, inquiring about his whereabouts. She mutters that he's not here and that he no longer works here. Elliot hesitates before walking past her, seeing a bunch of employees watching a video from F Society. Passionately, a man in a mask proclaims the excellence of the hack and how it'll free everyone from debt worldwide, the perfect storm of wrongdoings. From the inflections heard in the video, it's very obvious Elliot is the one who did it. A crowd in Times Square all watch as this video plays, all wearing that signature mask shown in every video. They cheer, holding up signs in celebration as the score powerfully empowers their ideals. A man who is about to go on TV frantically asks for his bag. Angela hands him some talking notes, to which he snaps at her, ordering for his bag back. She quiets down, the man apologizing. My first thought when I saw this man was, wow, if he was 40 years younger, I'd mistake him for a school shooter. Hey, thanks for watching. All the F Society members now have to incinerate all the hard drives using a, as Mobley puts it, dead puppy oven. Oh my god.
You know, I've run all the scenarios of our little revolution here, but using a dead puppy oven was not on my list.
Being the delightful people they are, they decide to free all the puppies. Not really an important scene, but a nice one nonetheless. We cut to one of the most disturbing sequences of the season, highlighting how manipulative and dangerous Joanna is. Elliot tries to come into contact with Terrell, but Joanna stops him before he can get inside, asking if she can help him. He asks her if Terrell is inside, and she says no, Elliot following that up by wondering where he is. Joanna asks Elliot who he is, and Elliot says they work together. Joanna answers by saying that Terrell is in traffic and that he'll be home in 10 minutes. Suddenly, a bunch of guys wearing F Society masks bump into Elliot, one falling to the ground, and the score finally starts. It's menacing and cryptic. She inquires about what he did with Terrell. The fact of the matter is, I can't really describe this scene. I know this video will be flagged for copyright reasons either way, but I'm just gonna play the scene and slightly edit it. While you're watching, pay attention to how the camera, as the conversation progresses, zooms out from Elliot and zooms into Joanna, symbolic of her gaining power as the scene progresses.
Looking for Tyrell Wellick. You know where he is?
Who are you?
We work together.
He'll be home soon. Just called me from the car 10 minutes ago. Stuck in some traffic. You're welcome to wait inside if you want.
I'm Ollie.
What were you working on with my husband?
You wanted my advice? You know about the hack that's going on right now?
When was the last time you saw him?
She's lying to me. He isn't coming. She's fishing for something. Not sure. It's last week, I think.
You know, between you and me, I'm a little concerned for Terrell. Was he acting strange when you saw him?
No.
That's funny. He was acting very strange last I saw him 3 days ago.
Didn't she say he just called?
One thing about the score is how it completely juxtaposes the lighting of the scene. They're both hiding something, just like the shot composition is hiding both their true intentions. Another thing is that it sounds vaguely like a siren, contributing to the notion that Joanna's very existence is a red flag. James Plouffe, the man from earlier who requested for his bag back, is now on national television, and it is revealed that he is the EVP of technology at Evil Corp. The woman on the other end of the phone call says that it's unrealistic for the public not to worry.
All of your servers, including your data center in China, as well as your offline backups, have been destroyed.
You want me to be honest?
Of course.
You're right. The public should be worried. Personally, my life is over.
James takes a sip of water, the panic and stress of all this getting to him. He asks her if he can be honest. Of course, she says yes, immediately prompting him to say that his life is over. He finishes by exclaiming that this whole situation will remain permanent. The encryption is too hard to crack. He grabs his bag and from within it reveals a gun. Everyone in the room is horrified. They scream in terror, running away from James. He asks for them to calm down, gently placing the gun to his mouth and pulling the trigger. All on live television. Philip Price meets with Angela downstairs, trying to comfort her a bit, inviting her to a press conference, saying he's been looking forward to her impressing him. She rejects the invitation with Philip, but he says it's always open. Before leaving, he places some money on the table before her, telling her she needs new shoes as her current ones are thoroughly veiled in red. Meanwhile, Elliot goes back to Terrell's car searching for answers. Nothing anywhere would lead to him until Elliot pulls out the sunroof cover. Glasses fall on him, a very strange OST playing. He pulls it apart, revealing a USB flash drive within it. In his desperation, he yells for Terrell to come out wherever he's lurking.
All right, come out! Come out now! Come on! I need to know what happened! Come on out! I'm waiting for you!
Since F Society can't guarantee the internet will work, they hand out flyers to a big event that'll happen this evening. Elliot, still trying to find Terrell, goes to a place that will offer him internet service briefly, since nothing else is working. Sticking in the flash drive, he thinks to himself that if Mr. Robot knows the password, so does he. He's learning, adapting to this new circumstance. Inside the file is a link to Vimeo, the video itself being called Boardwalk Fail. The video details a skater hanging out with their friends, Elliot seen in the background sitting by himself, the same boardwalk scene from earlier in this season. And in a flash, he jumps off by himself. No touch, no wind, nothing. Now the only way for Mr. Robot to show himself is for Elliot to do something completely irrational and force him to come out. After all, Mr. Robot is working in both their self-interests. To do this, he takes a phone from the bar and dials 911, telling them that he has a confession to make. Next, Angela is buying new shoes with the money Philip gave her. The man measuring her feet asks her if she witnessed the suicide on TV in person. She's silent. He, being kind of a dick, is shocked by her moving past the situation so quickly. She says that he doesn't understand, to which he retorts by telling her she should hear herself. Although he doesn't have any context for her decisions, he's right. Somehow, after all her endeavors to destroy this company, she ends up aiding it out of pure anguish. Angela snaps at him.
You mean to tell me you witnessed this thing and you're here to buy new shoes? Wow, it's pretty cold. How can you work there? That guy said it himself, they're just liars.
I know, they are. But I'm not sure that he knew what he was saying.
You sound just like them. Have some moral fiber and leave their asses.
Moving back to Elliot and Mr. Robot, we now get confirmation about how the public views them. Elliot slams Mr. Robot against the wall, the people around him watching as Elliot chokes himself. But he doesn't care. Mr. Robot is the only person in the world that knows where Terrell is. He pushes Elliot's hand off himself, stating that Elliot knows Terrell's whereabouts too. Elliot wants to make it clear to Mr. Robot that they are not the same person, to which Mr. Robot takes it as a challenge, walking up to a man and saying he had sex with his mom.
Hey, man.
How do you do, fellow kids?
I gotta tell you, I had sex with your mom this morning, and it was fantastic. It was a real nice smell.
The man punches Mr. Robot, Elliot taking the punch and collapsing, teleporting to where Mr. Robot was standing. Angela, in the end, goes to Philip's party. He compliments her shoes and outfits, Angela smiling back. She, despite everything, is actually starting to grow fond of this company. Philip allows her to ask any question she desires. So, she asks him how he stays so confident with all the employees flurrying out, swamped in paperwork. He says that it's because, under the weight of a conglomerate, situations such as these crack. They go on to have a friendly conversation, Philip finally being able to talk to his daughter. Through the lens of Season 4, we see a father and daughter that are able to talk to each other truthfully in a way that her and her stepfather were unable to. This scene then contorts to that of fear when Philip reveals that he's glad James killed himself. He was weak and held little purpose in Philip's eyes. Angela visibly distressed. This as juxtaposed to the speech he gives immediately after, hone in on Evil Corp's perception. Now everyone across the world will know of their evils. In the next scene, we get brief visuals of the party F Society is throwing. Nothing special. In Times Square, Elliot is limping, Mr. Robot struggling to bring him through the crowd of F Society enthusiasts. Mr. Robot pushes Elliot to a wall, ordering him to shut up. Everything is falling apart around him, his mother, his younger self, both appearing before his very eyes. The partition, the boundary, any tool for differentiation between reality and fiction is gone. Mr. Robot going on a tangent talking about how everything is a hoax. The world itself is a hoax, and Elliot has realized it, but hasn't fully taken it in. Everyone chanting and yelling. Elliot asks to be alone, bellowing at the crowd, and yet they continue. The music picking up, family watching him as he stands against a wall, not knowing what to do. They appear on a billboard, telling Elliot that they can never leave, that they're attached to him. Elliot, once again, yells at them for him to be alone, wondering what he should do next. Mr. Robot tells him exactly what's going on. He heads to the subway, gets on the train, goes home, and watches as the chaos ensues. Someone abruptly knocks on the door, Elliot not showing any concern whatsoever. Then, right before we see who's behind it, the credits roll. But wait, there's more. They have an Avengers-type end credit scene, meaning there's a Thanos in this universe. And sure enough, there is, and it's exactly who you think it is. This short scene follows a man walking into a very formal dinner party and meeting with Philip Price. They discuss the current circumstance, the man asking if they know who's behind these attacks. Philip says he does, telling the man that he'll take care of this person. The man takes an interest in the instrument a woman is playing. He says this:
"The infamous Emperor Nero played an instrument very similar to the one she's playing. Legend has it that he played it merrily as he watched.
As he watched?
As he watched Rome burn."
This man, or should I say woman, is White Rose. The conclusion to Season 1. Now, as I just said, I only did Season 1. This was honestly really exhausting, but I'm having a good time making it. If you'd like more videos like these, liking, commenting, all that jazz, hopefully subscribing, hopefully I've earned it at this point, making this like, I don't know, I feel like it's gonna be over 3 hours. I'm pretty certain it is. All that jazz would be greatly appreciated. The show totals out to 4 seasons, so hopefully this video enticed you to actually go watch the show instead of listening to a summary by a kid. It's really good, hence the very existence of this video. I don't have a proper conclusion right now. It's kind of abrupt, mostly because I'm tired, but also because I think everything that needs to be said has been. This video has been a while in the making. Hell, it's really long. But since I'm starting to feel motivation again, I believe the next upload should be fairly soon, and hopefully it's similar to this length, albeit quite a bit short. I mean like documentary length, not like insane, I'm gonna kill myself length. I don't care that much how well this video does. I just want to create cool stuff that can at least be enjoyed by someone. And if the reception is good enough, perhaps I'll do a review of Season 2, but I'll probably group it all together in one massive video. Considering the length of this one, that video will probably be 14 hours, so I don't know, man. It would be long. But, you know, until then, enjoy your day, and I'll see ya.